Again.
Yeah.
Just in time.
Have you never been able to prove him to the?
Every time they come, it doesn't do it. Now you've witnessed it.
Probation's problem in a couple months anyway.
Yeah, really. Don't bother. Well, whenever you're ready.
Okay, just one item on the consent agenda today, and that is a request to set up a public hearing for the vacation of a portion of O'Brien Road. So we handed out the map. There's just a portion in the middle that is pretty problematic for the county to maintain. Basically, it's about half of it is a creek. And so most of the winter months, it's really not that passable. And you can kind of see the gully where the green trees and things are in there. So a portion of that is difficult, if not impossible, to maintain for much of the year.
Clear warning,
Yes.
for you and my teammates, Centerville Fire Chief will be more than likely speaking against the vacation of that road.
Well,
we used it actually for that fire that was up there, or whatever it was, 3 weeks ago, the lightning caused fire. Granted, some of us went up the road and some of us went straight up the damn mountain, which was interesting. But anyway, no, he's adamantly opposed to it. I told him there would be a public hearing for him to speak.
Yeah.
Go from there. So
Yep.
anyway, just thought I'd pass it on.
Okay. So that's the one thing on the consent agenda that we have. The rest of it's just update and projects and other things that we have going. On the construction side, Old Mountain Road contractor still working on subgrade. Our survey crews are blue topping. Contractors challenged to find trucks and people to work and everything else, like most others these days. So I think progress is slow. And then the fire restriction, they wanted to work 410s and they're basically cut off early. So lots of factors that have held that one back, as well as other projects that we have. Let's see, grant funded guideposts and signs. That one is still on hold because of material shortages. However, the West Darlin paving project, the contractor plans to start on the 9th. And so we've had our reader boards up, just kind of notifying people. And that's
I will make sure I go the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could go the other way.
So anybody that can, at least we're warning them, but it's short duration. So, and basically there'll be 1 week that's really the paving week. But there'll be other activities.
Oh, is this gonna be one lane open or? Is this gonna be-
Yeah, always one lane. But there'll be delays.
Right.
And then we'll move those reader boards over to Roosevelt, because on the 16th, we're gonna start, the contractor's gonna start over there. And so we'll pave that one. That one has a much longer duration, pretty much till the end of November.
It just seems weird to be paving in October, November. I'm gonna have to wrap my head around that.
Why is it such a long?
The paving will be done.
Yeah, they have miles of guardrail to
Yes.
install. And so that'll follow, and there's minor work that,
So they're getting the paving done before there's any threat of rain and.
Yes.
Working
Yeah.
guardrail and stuff out.
yeah. Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of work associated with that
I
one.
did see those little down spout things,
Mhm.
things, those look interesting.
Yeah,
But,
yeah,
they look like they do the job.
yeah, they work. The old ones were just pretty much falling apart. So let's see, what else do we have going? That's it on the construction side there. We have our pre-con today on the West Darlin. And they'll get started shortly. I think we'll have a complete set of package design plans, details, specs here probably this week to review. So we'll start reviewing and then we'll have our package buttoned up and just kind of wait to the right time to let that one out for advertising for Courtney Road. Nothing new on the Klickitat path that we talked about last week. And then we're still working on the design work on those courthouse parking lots. that will start next year in the springtime. On the maintenance side, doing some grading where we can, kind of pushing the marbles around basically at this point in the year till we get some moisture that'll set things up. So lots of calls, people, get frustrated, but it's, there's not a lot we can do about it. Let's see, we have prepping, our crews are doing some prepping for the Roosevelt Grade Road paving project. And then, let's see, the West End crews, they're constructing a turnaround on Carr Road. They're placing crushed rock on Schilling Road and doing some grading. I didn't mention though, we have some pavement repair on Pipeline Road just at the city limits. So we're working with the city because it kind of overlaps. The city limits and the road is split at the center line. So half of the road is owned by the city and half is the county.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a
Oh,
crazy
one of those.
boundary.
Can we move the center line over?
Okay,
I knew
nice,
that was the
nice,
case
yeah.
with Pipeline, but do we have more of those?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh,
Spring Street.
Spring Street and White Salmon.
Yep.
It's a patchwork.
Checkerboards up. Sometimes it's the whole, it actually goes back. and
Yeah.
forth. So,
Yeah, depending on the annexation.
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, it'd be nice to change that piece of it to where when they annex it, they get.
take
the
the
whole
road.
road.
Yeah, that was the failure right there.
Yeah,
Somebody should say, no, you get the whole road.
okay. And then crews on the West End are hauling rock on Schilling Road, so a little bit of everything. On the facility side, the new building, supposedly our contractor said they were gonna move over today and start demoing the main parking lot here on the east side. But it doesn't look like they're there yet. So I know they're still tinkering on the other, yeah, right.
Today
Yeah,
is until midnight.
Yeah,
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 that happens still.
And start on is a relative term.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
We
true.
Parked something.
Yes, something will be parked, some piece of equipment will be parked there before the end of the
The
day.
end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's ongoing. They're pretty much prepping for everything. The Court Street and the alley to get paved the 15th, so next week, which will be nice to start finishing things. Flooring, carpeting, and vinyl are going down in pretty much all departments now. I know they put the vinyl in the health department now, so things are starting to look finished. There's these, most of the interior doorways they're called a Rayco frame, which basically it's an extruded aluminum frame that gets fabricated or installed. All the parts come and you have to fit it in there and put it all together. So it's not a simple frame that comes pre-made. And I think they've finally got it down. So this week they're Kirby is bringing in a whole other crew, and that's going to be their focus. So they'll knock all that out and start finishing up the openings and installing the doors. Electrical work. I think they've caught up. They actually weren't here this past weekend, which I'm sure the electricians were happy that they actually weren't working another Saturday. So they got a few days off. They've actually caught up pretty well. And power, I think PUD wrapped up their work last Thursday, and I don't think our electricians are actually ready to, fire up the building yet, but they're close. All the punch down in the server room by the electrician has been complete. And then the other systems like the video camera and security, I think they're finishing punching that down today. And then our IT staff will be in there starting to set up their equipment this week. And as well as the fiber people, Wave is coming in this week to connect the fiber runs from the alley in our new conduit to this building and then back over to feed the new building. So all that work's happening, lots of things going on. The mechanical and then moving, I think I talked about setting up a meeting with the departments and everybody that's going to move this month so we can plan to move in November. And since that day is coming up quick. Expenditures, we're about 16.5 million so far. We're getting close to the end. And then we're current change orders are at just under 1 million, which is around 6%, and still under our 8% budgeted.
Sorry, backing up just a smidge. If we finish at 6% and we have that little 2% left over, what kind of number is that?
According to this, looks like almost 300,000.
Yeah, about there.
We budgeted 1.295 for change orders, and
We're at about 1 million.
We're at about.
Yeah. Let's see. We opened bids on our Annex 5 relocation to the fairgrounds today. And then the guys on the design side are still working on the parking lot expansion, and the city is hopefully, I keep kind of poking to get them to actually schedule the vacation of Grant Street behind the building. And so we can move forward on our parking lot. Courthouse entry, I'll let you.
Pouring today on the south side. We'll pour again on the 9th, 11th. So we have 4 scheduled through the 15th to try to pour as much out as we can. It's just a matter of putting the railing back on. So we're slowly starting to see the end of it. We got some painting of the gargoyles and things up here.
I was glad to see they had, visqueened the stuff really good before they pour. That's always, you
Splatter.
get splatter, you
Yeah.
don't think, it's like, really, I have to do it up this high, and it's inevitable. But especially on those, the doors and stuff, those are
Yeah, that
ticket items to
Yes.
have. So they're a good quality outfit. I mean, they know what they're doing.
They are. I was a little leery, but they do know what they're doing. They bring in a big crew when they come to pour. Bust them all up from Vancouver, They have a whole group of people, the finishers, which is nice.
Especially on stairs.
Yes,
Those go
exactly.
south in a hurry.
Yeah,
Yes,
a lot of finishing.
yeah.
Okay, fairgrounds, met with Aaron at the fairgrounds. They want to have.
Good example.
Boy, okay, we heard enough
Again. Yeah, I heard nothing.
So Aaron has talked about using the Joan Fry Arena as well as Horse Barn B. So they want to be able to drive through. That's the only other barn that you can drive through and actually not run into something at the other end. So
We'd only do it once, and then
Yeah,
it would be right.
yeah, so that'll delay our indoor riding. So usually we start that the 1st of November. So that'll delay it by probably 6 weeks, and we'll have to adjust our fees for those that get season passes for that.
Yeah.
And so they'll use it for that first week in November, first week in December, and then that's it. So it's kind of a big push. Not like the hospital had done several days throughout each month. Or the first part of the year. Radio?
We went up and flew it, and the site we picked was the correct site. So it's just a matter of putting things together now. If I can break the survey crew away, we can get some points, then we can put together our agreement with the district.
Well, that finishes our list unless you have something else.
No, no,
It's getting shorter and shorter.
we're saving it for a Thursday.
Ouch.
No phone calls, no. Nothing.
Okay.
It was a quiet weekend,
Good.
which was good.
Good.
This week will be much more. Well, yeah, that's just everybody was safe enough. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Closes quick.
Yeah, it does.
That's what I meant. We're having door issues for all you people on Zoom. Go write a newspaper article.
Dave will be right back. He forgot something. So.
Now it's gonna work just fine for him, look.
Of course.
Magic touch, sir,
It
magic
is,
touch.
I don't know.
Look, yeah.
That is bizarre how that does
There's
that.
gotta be a hydraulic or an air ram in that door frame that's not functioning properly. I don't envy whoever's gotta deal with that. Probably a door replacement at this point. And a frame replacement.
Hope you gentlemen have a good weekend. I did, very busy. But most of it good, most of it fun. So. We're running a little ahead, so whenever you're ready.
I'll be back. Here.
All right.
What about swimming now?
You broke it. We sent Public Works to fix it.
Okay. Oh, sad that we're back to these.
I know.
The bank lobby is closed.
Really?
Yeah.
You have to, like knock on the window or.
We
You can only give them money, not take any.
Oh,
okay.
all right.
can go to the drive up,
Yeah, which bank?
will you?
Oh.
And the others might be as well, I don't know.
I'll find out, I think.
All right, maybe start out with economic development after a good morning.
Yes, good morning.
The regional economic development study, the summit, that's still, everyone's still working on that. We're preparing for the summit to occur on the 22nd of this month, from 8:30 to 12:30. And y'all should have got an invitation. If not, email one to you. It's going to be in person, but there's a Zoom option. This afternoon, there aren't a lot of projects in there that are on the county's to-do list. They're mostly City of Goldendale, but I'll be meeting with Larry Bellamy and the consultant they have regarding a proposed aquifer storage and recovery project here in the city, and that potentially could have a micro hydro component because they're moving water down from up the Simcoe Mountains, and there's significant pressure involved in that. And on that note, it's a part of a larger city project to replace some piping that's coming down from their water sources and distribution piping. I'm not sure if there's a role for us in that, but there may be on the ASR component, aquifer storage and recovery component, because the next step in that would be a pilot test getting funding for that.
As far as attendance to that, right? Regional economic development, Martha reached out and wanted to know if you guys needed an invite, and I questioned, I told her I talked to you guys about it, about having to, if more than one of us went, having to post it and the risk of posting it. So we need to figure out whether we want to publicly announce more than one of us going to that.
On the Reds, that's what it is,
Yeah.
isn't it? The Reds.
Yeah.
On that day, you guys also have union negotiations, which I have not received a schedule yet.
Right.
And on the agendas, Dan, we can post, like the board's going to participate in this, or you're going to be doing that. We usually
Right.
do note that.
It, my worry was noting it. I fear if we announce too much, it's going to be bombarded with protest signs. So if you're dealing with state and federal people who want to possibly give you grant money, it's probably not a good idea to have a big to-do while doing it, which was my worry.
Yeah.
The actual time, yeah, 8:30 to 12:30, I already talked to Rob, so I don't have anything that day, or at least that morning. So if you want to, fine, but that was my worry about more than one.
Have a good time.
You've hopped with enough grant managers.
If you meet him, let him know.
There you go. Okay.
I'm here for moral support.
Yeah.
More, yeah.
That's my worry, is because
I would not have even thought that.
a lot of community tend to rain on every parade that comes. And I worry that there would be a rain on the parade. So this whole thing has kind of been under the radar for the most part, for that very reason. And I would hate to us ruin that by making,
Being a lightning rod.
yeah,
Well, if you'd like to keep talking about it.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone will show up.
yeah.
All right. And related to that, we've been participating in the kids' update of their economic development strategy, the SEDS meetings. And one of the things they're looking at there is broadband, and we're talking about broadband, and we may have an opportunity that the PUD is bringing to the table that work with a neighboring county PUD to bring fiber in as far as Goldendale. I guess they're working in East County, but I don't have.
Coming from east over here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So that would be Middle Mile bringing it into Goldendale so that. they can
I
extend
think
out?
some of the extent of it is still topic of discussion, but Middle Mile and maybe some retail. I don't know. Buildable lounge inventory, housing needs analysis. You're aware that work product was delivered, presented to the EDA board. Subgroup of the board members met to review that in discussion, including Commissioner Sauter, just to see how we want to proceed from here with actionable items. I think it turned into more of a brainstorming session. I think one of the interesting points was when we released the RFP, one of the attractive things was to provide a list of quote catalyst opportunities. But when it distilled down, I think the discussion summarizes it. It's, should we be picking winners and losers, and maybe that, catalyst opportunity is not a good way to do it. So they're going to
That
be.
makes me feel better about that meeting.
Right. And I think you also appreciate that, one of the big needs is housing. But I heard strong sentiment that public agencies maybe shouldn't be in the housing development business. So I think there's a broad discussion, how do we facilitate that development? I
Without
saw,
having too big of a hand in it.
yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of, brainstorming, hand wringing.
Yes.
I was planning on listening in, and then I got busy.
And I don't know if you had a chance to look at the economic, the labor area summaries, reports that we get from Scott Bailey. I
Yeah.
sent Mays out to you. And I thought was particularly interesting was the population growth estimates in the county.
I didn't focus on
I
that.
didn't focus on that either.
It was down, we're, what was it? 1.7% growth for the year, which is a little above the state average, a little above what we did the year before. But the population for the year grew by 308 people. Over 90% of them were in the unincorporated areas. Now, before we were thinking the number would be about into 70% or more, but 90%.
That confirms the kind of anecdotal information that we are working with. Okay.
But unemployment is, in May was at 5.7%, down from 6.2 in April, and down from 10.3 the year before. So that
surprising to me. I couldn't believe they're below 6. I didn't figure we'd ever get below 6 there. That's a good number.
We didn't get hit as hard as many areas because of the diversity of employers here.
Right, I just think we have a bigger percentage than most to begin with of that 6 number.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, didn't have as far to fall.
Right,
I'm
right.
more surprised that it can be as high as 6 when every single business out there is hiring right now.
You would think. I posted the solar, Pickles and Solar's hiring for general laborers. Essentially, you're unloading trucks at $37 an hour. I still don't know if they have anybody.
All right, yeah, we've been pushing, we got
Did you
contacted.
get a number on
It's posted on my Facebook page, 37.
I'm not looking at your Facebook.
I only
page,
had
so-
one post on it, and it was an anti-solar post, so.
And I think the pay goes up to like 46 an hour for general labor.
Well, and that there was something that I was reading that there's a guaranteed 20 hours of overtime every week. Which now add that
We
is
can carpool.
$37. I mean, that's a pretty good wage. You can work, it's only guaranteed till the end of the year, but geez, that's a year's worth of wages for 6 months work.
Update on the federal EDA grant application for the airport infrastructure. Richard's been working with the USDA on that. Looks like what we need, that they will accept a draft lease. So a draft 20-year lease with the college. So he and Dan are negotiating away on that. So, and he needs to, revise his submittal letter, but his target's to get it in by September 22nd in order to make the October 6th meeting of their review board, where they would decide whether or not to award. They've been, the EDA person's been working with Richard a lot, so that's encouraging. So related to the airport, Commissioner Saw, you contacted me, and we've got some concerns, or we've got an issue with water. And long ago, the well that the airport has was promised, for want of a better word, to the Dallasport Water District. This is years ago, and it's just been slow. I think a lot of the problem has been changes in staff at the FAA, which needs to review it. And so we need to pick that up and see if we can make progress on that. I think the city of Dallas has been working on it. Maybe, with our connections to the ecology and stuff, we can see if we can get involved in that again and make that happen, because the water district's got a ceiling on their hookup capacity. And I don't remember, do you remember what that is?
I think they have 72 connections left in there, but they have several projects that potentially would exhaust that.
And there's fire flows.
Yeah, and the fire flow issues, and that's what they were raising concerns, because everything was based on being able to access not necessarily, probably not the physical water in the well, but the water rights. And so they're actually supplying we've reserved, because I think in that agreement, which was actually signed in 2011 to transfer those water rights, the airport reserved, I want to say like 54% of the water for the airport, for full build out of the airport. And so it allowed them, but everything that's been constructed at the airport and connected to the airport is not actually using it's actually using the district's water rights, because we haven't ever actually transferred ours. And so we need to get that over the finish line. And the FAA has been, which I know if they give us $1, they own us.
Yeah.
But it's like that, none of those resources, the FAA has had one dime into any of that stuff. So why we have to ask their permission to transfer a water right on a well that they never paid anything toward.
So that's been the holdup with that, is that
Yeah.
they?
Yeah, because the agreement, because the airport, the city and the county have already, we've signed a contract to transfer the water rights, but we have to get permission from FAA. Anytime you're disposing of an
Right,
asset.
why is FAA? Why is it taking so long?
Because I think they
Personnel
basically have to
changes.
start over every time, because you can't ever get
So it
the,
all comes down to gift of public
right,
property and, so the airport's transferring water, paper water to the district. The district is using their own water, the water to serve their customers outside the FAA, and the money didn't transfer hands, so we didn't sell it to them, and we're not allowed to sell it anyway. It's a goofy. Then the city attorney and I have worked together on it, and but every time you send something back to the FAA, they're like, bring me a different rock. So, you know, you send them another letter and then it'll take them 90 days to respond. And it's bring me a different rock. But we'll get through it. It's just, it's time consuming.
Well, it's being addressed. I feel comfortable with that.
Well, it's tempting to be. Yeah. Anyway. Okay, and I mentioned, I think the last meeting that Richard spoke to the fire district in Klickitat regarding their gear. He indicated it would probably be October, November when he expects to see an application from them, so. Goldendale Chamber contacted me here a week or two ago, and they were asking about funding a mural project through using their economic development support contract. They were asking if it was in the scope of work. I didn't have an answer right then, but I have looked and I think it can fit. I believe the project, if I call it correctly, is to be about $15,000. Half of it was being proposed was half of that would come from the county via the economic development support contract, and half of it would be from the city. And it's for down here at this intersection at Main. And it would be one building, and there's some more. You've heard some more regarding this.
Yeah, well, this was gonna be part of an update for you later, but the green building over here where the voter box is, right behind the voters box on that wall is where they're planning this, and this is step 1 of 4. They want to do all 4 buildings on that corner with different stuff. The dollar amount surprised me. Let's just say that, but yeah, no, and God, I want to say they were talking about a 10-year build out, but this is essentially the start of like a Main Street revitalization. They want to incorporate, it's a mural, but there's also some decoratage or something around the door of that building that they want to continue down the roads with address signs and whatnot. But I sat through that last weekend. It's a pretty cool mural. But that's where I'll leave that one.
so what kind of permission do they necessarily need from us? If this,
Just
they
be
don't,
just green light in terms of, yeah.
I mean, if it's within the scope of their agreement, then I guess that's really, if that's what they want to spend it
Yeah.
on, that's their business. So this is more information.
Yes.
Right.
Okay,
I think, yeah, because they didn't ask me for anything.
okay.
I wanted to see if any smoke.
Comes out, well, I mean, I didn't realize murals cost that much,
That was
but
kind of the part that kind of set me back too. So what it sounds like they want to be able to pay the designer of the mural and the facilitator of the mural and have a lot of volunteer people actually doing the painting.
How much money?
$15,000.
And it's gonna be painted by volunteers?
Some of it will be painted by volunteers. I don't know what percentage or what, or who gets paid what. I didn't ask those questions.
well, maybe when Lee and I get off from our truck unloading job, we can.
If the board is interested, the board can ask what the pay rate scale is. I didn't ask those questions.
No, a long time ago when this, or working with the chambers that led to these economic development support contracts, the initial projects were actual physical things like the benches downtown and that sort of thing. But it's expanded.
And the
Alright.
mural, just sorry to kick back, the mural, that whole side wall, let's say the mural's gonna cover about a third of it. Unless there's more questions, I'm done with that one.
Yeah.
We should ask, how much it cost him to put the honky tonk, paint on that whole thing. I know a mural is different, but it seems pretty darn excessive.
But I guess that's what they want to spend their money on.
I was gonna say, that's kind of the kicker is they have the economic development funds for what we paid. And if that is in the scope of work,
And it's their choice.
it's kind of their choice unless we want to micromanage. So,
Yeah, the scope of work item, I saw that fitting under the sponsorship and or participation in projects providing direct benefit to businesses in the contractor's service area, so. Bringing up downtown would benefit the businesses.
I like the mural project. I guess would be happy to say publicly and to everybody listening that I would rather $15,000 upgraded their website. I think they're giving a bang for the buck than that, but without micromanaging, I would just sit here.
Move along.
Okay, and we're working with, some business recruitment opportunities. Some of them are large that you're aware of. And then, there seems to be a flurry of interest in spirits lately. So, there's some folks looking at opening wineries and even a distillery. But those are all, there's all three of them. It's all about the west end of the county. I haven't seen any of those here in the Goldendale area. So that sums up economic development unless.
Questions on economic development? No.
Do you, actually, I kind of do, when we get our small business specialists working in our area, is there space in your office over there for that? Or,
We've, Whitney works remotely part-time, so between her and Richard, we're switching out offices. He also works a compressed work week, 4/10s and stuff, so we can find space in there.
is there a conference room or something that even she could use while she's in town, or?
The back office there across from mine where Whitney is rather large, so it probably
No, I'm
fit.
talking new building.
Oh, in the new building?
Yeah.
There's office space for her there.
Okay.
And then I would imagine she'd have the space available. We do, I am going to be talking to her and Dwayne from WSU this week. Have had some challenges with she scheduled some meetings in White Salmon.
There you go. There's plenty of office space in the WSU section.
So in White Salmon, there was
Alright.
a
Shall I arm
challenge.
wrestle for him? I'll go on it. So, yeah, there were some challenges. We had a meeting space lined up and got bumped by the court. So they had a jury meeting in there. So you indicated that you've got a room that you use, so if we could talk a little bit more about that. So how do I make that available? And I mean, what we were looking at is for her to have, I believe it was Fridays, to have meeting space available if she meets with clients that are in the White Salmon area.
Okay, we should be able to accommodate something, I would think,
Okay,
down there.
Is she gonna have a set schedule where she's whatever Fridays there? And
Yeah.
Monday, Tuesday,
That would be
Wednesday,
helpful,
Wednesday,
because that way we
Thursday,
can
you're-
we can
right.
just.
But right now they're working mostly remotely.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much remotely.
Okay.
Yeah. As I will discuss in my budget meeting, that's saved us a bit of money, the remotely this year, because I was planning to have to lease office space for that, so. Those are costs we won't incur. Now moving over to natural resources. Whitney's going over the revised new proposed critical habitat rule. Comments are due the 20th of this month. The Forest Resource Council is also working on that. As it's Skamania and Lewis County continue to look on that. They're developing a map showing land that's not suitable because of stand age and fire severity. Their estimated cost of that is $14,000. Does the board want to contribute to that effort because we could use the work product? This is not signing up for the litigation though. This is, we could use that work in our, I don't have a cost estimate per participant, just I know the overall cost. Have you heard anything specific to individual?
No, but it would involve the 3 counties and the AFRC, so you divide that by 4.
So on the 14,000, you believe is the full cost, not the shared cost.
Correct.
We did it, we can say up to.
How much of that will cover in Klickitat County?
We're a small
Yeah,
piece of it,
just the west.
but it would be good because we've got area that got fire risk.
But did we get to cover a small piece of it, or did we get to cover?
That hasn't worked before, or we've been a full.
Anything we give is more than they're gonna get, so.
This is more your area.
So last time we kind of stepped away from this. And I'd be interested to see what the staff's recommendation is. We talked a little bit on the phone about it.
Yeah, we see what how that work product's going. I think, if we wanted to, maximum maybe 3,000 on that to participate. And we hope to also get some of their information from their comments that'll save us a lot of digging to have some of the stuff highlighted that we might want to focus
Put
on.
into ours.
I'd be fine with 3.
I think I could do that.
Yeah, they're having the economic study updated and a bunch of other stuff that we could use in our comments. So maybe a 3,000 max. And I would think that we probably contact it'd be either to Lewis County or Skamania County that's the avenue that
Yeah,
would
they've been kind of the lead. I don't know if Lewis is or Skamania has been leading, but
it's been largely Lewis County just
That's what I
because
was
of the resources.
right. I mean, it used to be,
Well,
yeah, it used to be Lewis and us.
Yeah.
And
well, I think it was Lewis's prosecuting attorney or whatever, deputy prosecutor that was involved. He was the one that was the champion of that side. And then Skamania County Commissioner.
Right. Ferruginous hogs. They've been uplisted by the state from threatened to endangered.
What, Hawk?
Ferruginous hawk, they're the largest hawk. We do have ferruginous hawks when you go to east part of the county, Pine Creek Basin
By the windmills?
and Alder Creek Basin. Yeah, in fact, I started getting involved in the wind farms when there was I wasn't doing economic development at the time, but there was a ferruginous hawk fatality at one of the wind projects that made the news. So it's need to pay attention. I think we've maybe had 2 fatalities. I need to check. I don't have that.
Do they have any kind of estimate on the population in this county?
It's not large. No, it's small, but the population centered over in Benton, Franklin County. The nesting sites, they're migratory birds, so they come through here. They're here
I've never heard
until
of that.
January, and they nest. Once the chicks have fledged, they move on to Canada and Montana and down to. Kind of interesting watching their flight paths. If you've seen the telemetry data on that, they cover a lot of ground. Oregon spotted frog with the 2 years of drought and no Big muddy water, it's been a tough year for the frogs. I guess Whitney's been in communication with Fish and Wildlife Service about maybe getting a meeting together this winter to discuss.
So I guess I'm getting clarification that the spotted frog is an endangered frog, correct?
Yes, it's federally listed. It's red.
And when the tribe cut off the water, that harmed that poor endangered frog, right? Just checking.
There, the Big Muddy supplied a lot of water into the basin, and there would be some effect.
Detrimental effects from not having that water there, yeah.
So, unquantified, but there should have been some impact, just less water being put into the basin. Our Dry and Butler Creek projects, we're doing the stream flow monitoring. Those stream flow gauges got blown out. In the process of reciting them, we've run into issues related to cultural resources, not the discovery of cultural resources, but the governor signed an executive order back in April that enhances consideration for cultural resources. So trying to see if that can be a desktop exercise, but if it gets on the ground or even desktop exercise could be a problem for landowners. You've got private landowners giving us permission to get on site. And if you're going to put a stake in the ground, then they need a cultural resource survey for that. We're going to lose permissions
Yeah,
for siting projects. This one, we've already heard from a landowner that, no.
So what's the threshold though? I mean, literally put a stake in the ground
Yes.
is the trigger?
Any
Any
ground
post. We dealt with that, with the conservation district a few years ago. Anything that would accept federal dollars, you'd have to do a full cultural resources survey if you were building. And so, they would usually pay for about half the cost, right?
Right.
But when you work it all out, doing the cultural resources survey and jumping through all the hoops, that came to more than the cost than you were having to get for your 50/50.
Right.
well, and even above that, as a landowner, I don't know that you really want a cultural resources person on your land, so.
Well, I would go question is that maybe, do we have definitive that is actually the standard? Like you're saying a T-post, which sounds ridiculous to me. Do we have that somebody said, oh yeah, if you're doing a T-post, I mean, did they put that in writing that said yes? And is that, because I cannot believe that that's the standard. And if that's the standard, there may be a staff member that feels that's the standard, but that's something that we could certainly push
I
on.
understand there was a proposal at one point was, well, we can minimize by putting a piece of rebar down the ground, that down and strapping it to that, and no, that won't even work.
Yeah, so we've been talking with a staff member.
There has to be a threshold for,
Yeah.
there has to be. I mean, again, a staff member may feel like that, but show me where that is the definitive standard.
Yeah.
Just because a staff person, because I would be willing to bet that staff person is wrong. If that really is the standard, it's like, where is that authority to show me where it's like, because if I want to go and take a shovel full of dirt out to bury dog poop in my yard, I'm not going to get a cultural resource survey to do. I cannot believe that's the standard.
It's, if I remember correctly, it's any ground disturbing activity. And they talked with the state attorney general's office, because
Any means any.
any means any.
So it's been, for a long time, it's been that we needed an inadvertent discovery plan and that sort of thing to do anything.
Well, yeah, I get the
It's
inadvertent
amped up.
discovery. If I take a shovel full of dirt and I find cultural resources, of course, I should, that's a trigger right there, but I would have to survey before. I mean, most things, there is a threshold that is exempt. If you're below, because it's considered minor, it's not, You know, we don't, I mean, it's the same concept of, if you want to build a chicken house, we don't require a building permit if it's under a certain size. Even the Gorge Commission does not require under a certain threshold. There's no permits, there's no review, there's no nothing. If it's under a certain threshold, if the threshold is 0, that makes it really, I question that.
Yeah, so I think we're still working through exactly this. I was just giving you a heads up. If this turns out to be that we need to do a survey just to
That's gonna be a problem.
put a gauge on the stream, it could make.
I think
these
that's an
projects challenging.
unrealistic standard.
Or
They'll
you
want to
should-
Come up and give us their annual review. Their annual
That would be a good
update,
time.
And that would be a good.
Really good
We
time.
Dealt with that.
Who's gonna do this?
Huh?
Who's annual?
The Underwood Conservation.
Okay.
District.
You either tell me where you need to gauge and just, you might see it in the morning.
I'm not recommending.
I wouldn't need it, it's just couldn't actually do
Okay, let's see. Klickitat Mill, the fisheries projects, they're expecting to, for the, the stream redesign there, they're expecting to get the grant, what, later this month or early
Late
next month?
September. Yep.
And then they'll still need to go out and get a contractor to do the work. But they're they're looking to the county as to what we're going to do with our property. There was a meeting with various property owners and the fishery heads group in Yakima Nation Fisheries here the other week discussing that. I think we looked into it, the consent or the no further action letter that was issued to the upstream landowners was a little muddled with regard to, it named their properties as having the covenant, but it also said that we could have one to remove the covenant from our land, but there never was any on the county land. So I think we're going to move forward and get that clarified for the future. My Switzerland Canyon project, the big water storage project, that thing has been pretty much on hold for a good year and a half between COVID and working through some changes to the scope of work so we could get that last contract amendment. That project is up and running again. Thank goodness. Hope to have by the end of the year, most if not all of the additional studies done that we needed to do to respond to the comments received during SEPA scoping. So I'm glad to see that going, and then we'll be meeting with ecology sometime in the next couple of months for another contract amendment and additional monies to wrap it up. The legislature provided another $250,000 for that project, and so we need to scope this next step to actually do the EIS, its document itself, and get it out and through comment. The East Klickitat or East Semco CRM, that's regarding the property that was acquired by WDFW, and they're developing a co-management understanding with the Conservation District. WDFW has hired a consultant to facilitate that, and they're scheduling a meeting. I'm going to ask Whitney to sit in on those meetings for the county. Commissioner Anderson, you tracked that firsthand for a little bit. Could you assist with some more detailed briefs on that process and where the hiccups are?
Yeah.
that we've
And I'm
experienced?
getting emails too. So, and I'm going to try to go to some of those if they fit into the schedule.
Okay. All right, that's a resource. Let's have questions.
Oh, no, not right now. I'm writing them down. Agricultural resource.
it. Are you highlighting your?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Well, it's April, it's a new order, so I think we may still be
I'm just happy. that
defining exactly what it means.
It's April. But it only says O2 on it, which means that you only had 2 of them so far.
Yeah,
We had good opportunity to talk with Tova and then
Mhm.
also the prosecuting attorney, and then again on the, because it's, you know, we've had other circumstances where agencies are interpreting it to mean one thing, and when we have really pressed on it, it's, no, there's some other considerations that override that. It's, again, there are thresholds
yeah.
of things. Typically, you know, yes, you know, there's all kinds of things that should be reviewed but at a certain, you know, there is a threshold generally where it's exempt from any sort of review. And if this is in fact actually saying that, and that is what the whole point of it was, then yeah, we need to push back on that, because you couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
We did this, I remember what it was. It was along the BZ Glenwood Highway, and it was that fence line that collapsed. And we ended up having to have the cultural resources person on staff when they went and dug the holes for the post holes and everything.
They had to be there inspecting every single post hole going all the way down.
But if I'm remembering, I think that requirement was only on the federal property. And that was on the entire, I would be curious, if that was true. So I know I'm.
But even that, you're digging a hole, you're excavating dirt, pounding a T-post or a piece of rebar is so minor compared to actually digging a hole.
Well, and I would have a different standard to me, as if there are no, you know, if I'm driving a T-post in a known cultural resource, that's different. Any activity that takes place where we know they're like, this is a site, then you got to be super careful. But to raise the standard that it's the entire world, I think that is unreasonable. And I don't think, because if you ask people, I mean, people would seem, oh yeah, of course it's reasonable that you would want to protect culture. Of course, I want to protect cultural resources. But if the standard that's being set is that you have to, it triggers a full-blown, you know, thing. Every time I want to take a shovel full of dirt, that's unreasonable. And 99% of people would not support that. They would think that was a huge overreach.
You mentioned Tova.
At least
yeah?
this person would
You
think that.
mentioned Tova coming in, but we're working on this project. We're with Central Klickitat Conservation District. Are you thinking Tova because she may have put something in more recently?
Just because Tova was wanting to come in and do her yearly update.
Oh, okay.
We just get her opinion.
And what she dealt with
Yes.
state and federal.
Yeah.
Okay.
We went, you know, when I served on the board, we went around and around, and so that's why I'm kind of being quiet, because all the things you're saying, I said.
But you've already said.
And the conservation district is the one who's been coordinating with ecology, and they have been pushing back on this a little bit, and ecology has recognized that they are trying to kind of layer a new rule and standard on top of an existing project. So we're hopeful, but we just don't know. So we'll see.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for getting my blood pressure elevated for the day, so.
And you're prepared for 1 o'clock.
Yeah. Well, yes. Well, good morning, Madam Auditor. Are you bringing your
We are.
your new,
Heather and I would like to introduce Debbie Bridges to you.
yes, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, it's 11 o'clock and you're still here, so.
You didn't see the ankle change.
I
Borrowed one of those
Those monitors from Larry. That's good. Well, good. All right. Well, if they're not nice to you, you come down and talk to us, and I'm sure we could find something
I
for
don't
you.
think that'd be a problem, but thank you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if you took her for Brenda, Brenda would shoot you.
Well, I know, but
I probably wouldn't do anything. I might go visit Bob's, you know. special hotel
right,
for it,
special
but I
hotel
would,
for it.
I would
Yeah.
be far more so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're the one I need to worry
Yeah,
about.
no, I can
Yeah.
sometimes have something up my sleeve.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it will be great, but no, really welcome. I know you're much appreciated. So, So we're happy to have
Good
you.
thing.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Get out of here, you can have early lunch, huh?
Yeah. Oh, you should see the emails.
Well, I just meant from here.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye now.
Thanks.
With that. Yeah.
She peeks back through the door.
What's public work 4616? That's good. So any updates or anything before we are running way ahead? So,
Well, I could give you updates.
okay.
Let's start with senior board. I got to go do. So Sharon explained it all to him.
This is the in-home care.
In-home, a piece of the in-home care. We still do like 120 people of in-home care. This is only a small little fraction.
Right.
And then they had questions for me, in which I answered, and it came down to, surprisingly to me, a unanimous vote in favor of discontinuing and transitioning those people to private or other. I thought there would be one holdout. I thought there'd be one holdout, but I think the questions got answered that they needed answered. So it was a unanimous decision, and they did hold a vote. Sharon was looking for, I guess, a recommendation from us for her to now move forward with transitioning that. I told her she can, pop in as citizen commenter anytime and get the official nod from us, or I don't know if you want to give Lee the nod, and Lee can send her an email that says we gave her the nod, so she doesn't have to walk over here.
But when she was here last week, she was thinking the transition would occur by the end of the year. Is that what she was still thinking?
Correct, and that's what the senior board was told, is
Okay.
because our license expires January 1.
Right.
We're
Okay.
gonna keep it through the end of the year and try to transition all of those people into other facilities, and also try to transition any of our employees that don't want to just work for the
Become
state
provider,
directly
right.
and do that, to possibly facilitate those up. But yes, no, that will continue through the end of the year.
Okay. Okay, well, that's good.
So do you want to wait for her to come ask for her?
I don't know. I mean, I'm fine with it. I mean,
Yeah, I'm fine with
are you
it.
okay with, I think that's the,
We don't need a motion. We just
No,
need to.
she just wants a verbal go ahead, and so
to
that's.
start
instead
the
of doing
process.
A verbal go ahead, we can just shoot her an email
Yeah.
that says the board gave her a verbal go ahead.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have her put something on paper to explain the situation.
Yeah.
Because when we get some sort of flack, because
And we're going to.
say that we don't care about seniors, we have something.
We
that-
brought it to the senior advisory board and got a unanimous vote.
Right, this is a recommendation, which is helpful to us.
Yes, it is. That's why I was glad there wasn't a holdout or two.
Okay. Well, good. All right.
Grenade taken, sir.
Yeah.
We can go back into artwork. So when I talked to them about that, I met with them at the chamber in which they sell artwork, and there's artists all over this community, and that's a kind of a big deal here. I did bring up that we talked about doing murals and whatnot, or paintings or something in the courthouse, of which they loved or in the new building, in which they loved the idea. And then when they mentioned the price for this mural, I started going, well, we could probably get some stuff from Amazon. So I don't know where that discussion will go, but there's some really good stuff that they have, and the lady that does a photography shop right up here next to the Sentinel had some really beautiful stuff. Anyway, so I don't know where you guys want to go on this. My thinking was, is as this building gets a little built, grab a couple of them and walk them through the building and kind of give them our take. If we can go over there and maybe give them a tour, and give them our take on what we're looking at or what we're trying to do. They brought up ideas of, because I'm trying to not have to pay for things. of doing a wall or whatever, that they can possibly lease the wall and show locals art that's for sale. I don't know that we can do that in a public building. So that might be something for the prosecutor to see whether we can have items for sale. Yeah, you'd have to contact them, but we're out of it. But that would get us free art. And it would keep the stock rotating. I also told them that we would probably want to have a hand in what art, which they started to take offense to a little bit, but I told them I want to make sure we don't get into some kind of political art, and which have they understood. So where we go from here, who knows? That was kind of one of the reasons why I was, well, my number of asking the difference between the 6% and the 8%. Not that I want to use any of that, but just to kind of get an idea of what was there.
I mean, I think we'll use the full 8% by the time we get there.
Possibly, especially the last change order.
Finish work is always.
Yes, the last change order will jack it. But anyway, I was trying to see if there was anything in there, which is why I asked them about leasing wall space or, you know, donation or whatever. But I figure there's some stuff we'll have to, depending on the price, if they want, you know, crazy numbers like that, 15,000 for a mural, I'll take a white wall. I'm not spending taxpayer money at that regard, so. But anyway, as we move along, we might want to do a little walkthrough, and I don't know if you want me to do the walkthrough. We all do walkthroughs. Otherwise, you get my opinion on where art goes, and your opinion on where art goes. I also think it'd be wise to maybe, or not wise, but entertaining if we do one hallway in history. Old newspaper articles, you know, stuff when the courthouse burned, thing burnt down and the hanging that occurred in the town and all that kind of weird stuff. So just an idea shooting out there. So yeah, I think that's it, other than I have one for when Lynn comes later.
Sure. Nothing that I need to.
Okay, I did have one item. I did get a request. I had a email on Friday from Preston, the executive director of the Yakima Nation Housing Authority, looking for, they were submitting another grant application and they were looking for a support letter. He had termed it as from our EDC, you know, so it'd be Dave McClure. And I had inquired, is that what, you know, I can ask about that, or would it be helpful if it was from the board or an individual commissioner? I actually have not heard back from him yet because of the long weekend. So I don't know, but I did offer that I would bring it up as far as the board. Is that something that we would, it's not asking, it's just a, you know, they have to show local support for projects. So it would be additional part of their build out down at the Wishram project that they've already, because they have it.
Like the next page.
It is, but it's not a dish, because they have their site for so many, but they only had funding for up to, I think it's 45, and they're slated to go up to 60 some. So this, I think they're submitting for the next group of them, and so they were looking for a letter of support, which in the interest of goodwill, I would support myself. That's what I offered. If an individual commissioner is of any value, I'd sign it. But
I don't have a problem with the board doing it.
yeah. Your thoughts?
I don't have a problem either if we could throw some wordage in there that is we're working together.
Right. Well, I think we can have, our letter of support is our letter.
Right.
And so, yeah, he had sent a draft. It was coming from.
How the current board is extending an olive branch and wants to work with our neighbors to ensure a prosperous future for all of our residents.
Okay, I think we can put
Sounds good to me.
some words, I mean, we can dress it up to, because again, it's our letter, it's not their letter. He did supply a draft, but okay.
Lee will do a really good job with
I've already got one started.
Yeah.
it. I was waiting for the. hint.
Here it is. Here it is. Yeah.
If it was
That
probably
looked like
over there, so like,
version
27 here.
Until I just mentioned the wordage there, she probably had, actually crap, I gotta go change a few words.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, that's good. Okay,
that's
we can-
good. That's, your guys' input is important.
That's all I.
Oh, the only thing I didn't mention with me is I was busy and unable to attend the county childcare development meeting last week, so.
I would say I could give a little more of an update than Dave did with the buildable lands inventory little subcommittee, which was Jason Spadero. We had invited the mayors, Mayor Tiefler did participate. Leslie Hebert from up here, Dale Cannell from the bank, myself, and then Richard, and we were just kind of going over the results. And there was, it's interesting because there's been that's what happens when it takes 2 or 3 years to get through that. There's a kind of philosophical change on the part, and so it's like because originally when that study was commissioned, that was one of the deliverables, was these catalyst sites that we were going to actually call out. And they had them. And so, but the current thinking is like people were really uncomfortable with that, with calling out specific, kind of picking winners and losers. And so there's some discussion going on that. We're going to meet again prior to our next KC BoCC meeting. So sometime in the next month or so that we come up with some kind of recommendation, because that was the whole point of the subcommittee. Is it's really difficult to try to herd something with the full 15 members. So that was the like a smaller subcommittee to look at it and come back with some ideas. And so everybody is that was the homework, was come back with one specific actionable recommendation to the subcommittee,
For one specific site
or no, like an idea,
one
or
specific
just
plan.
a specific plan.
Well, I would recommend that plan incorporates one site from each district. But that's just-
Well, they didn't really want to, and there was just, of course, we want, broad across the whole county, but it was funny. There was a pretty wide range of approaches to what we should even do with this information, from one end of like, we shouldn't even really be involved. We should just basically release the information to the universe, let the private sector deal with it as they do.
See, to me, I kind of want to hear that diverse range of thoughts on the matter. So
Well, you're going to get it at the next KC BoCC meeting.
I was gonna say, even if you guys don't come up with a idea or a plan or whatever, that's fine with me, because
Right.
it's not like you got to take action on this tomorrow.
No,
I
not
would
at
like
all.
to hear each individual person's thoughts on their whole thing, so.
I would say from my perspective, as far as the voice that I was at the table, I was looking at this drive from the county's perspective, or the government entities, if the municipalities, was using the information to drive discussions about where to make, or as far as public infrastructure investments, not into we're not in the house building business. I don't want but it does, like when we looked at 10 years ago, when there was a hookup moratorium in White Salmon because there were no water hookups, because there was all this infrastructure that needed to get done. It was really easy because it was like, that's the limiting factor. So let's go, work with the legislature. Let's go do whatever, put these projects to get that stuff fixed. And then we're kind of done with it. And which it did, it worked in that there is, there are connections in.
They expanded their connections.
They
but now
expanded
they're about tapped out again.
Yeah, no, I think they're in good shape. They're in good shape, but that was the kind of
Talking
focus.
about they only had like 73. And
No, that's Dallas.
no, they White Salmon, because that one property that's right on SR 14.
No, that's Pigeon. they use water, but they have their own water system too. Yeah, you're right. The one on 14, that is, they
Because
don't.
they were saying that one would tap them out.
Right.
That's binging, not
Bingen, not white salmon. White salmon's in good shape.
White
But
salmon-
the reason white salmon is in good shape is because that became the focus of, because there was a more, you couldn't get any
Was that a
connections.
focus of state pressure? Or was that our economic development board help funding them to increase their
Both,
capacity?
I would say. So I was just using that as an example.
Right.
Kind of my focus was what are if
See,
the
I-
catalyst sites across the county, what do they need as far as the infrastructure? And that's what I would be focused on, because that's, you know, it's pumps and pipes and
Right.
that's a tangible thing that's easy to like, not, you know.
Not building apartment complexes.
Right.
Well,
that's-
another one is, so say you come in for special use permit or some sort of something in your catalyst site and you're like, according to the community, according to the buildable land inventory, this is the location
Right.
that we need to put this kind of
Right.
infrastructure in. And so, or you're going out for grants or whatever, and you can roll back to your buildable land inventory.
Right,
and
say this was
This is on this
identified.
list, kind of like how often we're like, this is on our said list, this is on this
Right.
list. Because once you're on a list, then you're eligible for funding.
Right.
Because it's not just what you want, it's what the community at large
Right.
has agreed is the right direction.
Right.
So I see it both ways. You're picking winners and losers, but on the other's hand, I'd rather pick something than nothing.
Right.
Especially if we've already paid the people to do all the darn legwork, and then we're just going to eliminate it, and you're like, oh, well, we spent.
I don't think you eliminate it, because I think the private sector is gonna be looking at that map too.
I mean, but not if you don't include.
But those aren't, but there was no surprises on that list.
I honestly,
It wasn't like
I
the
was-
private sector didn't already know. That's why they're on the list, is because
I was kind
they
of
provided the information.
curious, I guess I would say, 2 years ago. On why that was even being done. I was assuming you guys thought there would be things that you were unaware of that would come up because of this, and I didn't see anything that surprised me reading through it.
It helps to know where growth is likely to occur, so that when you go into comprehensive plan use zoning, then you can roll back to your.
I guess you go there, yeah.
inventory, which is usually required when you do a comprehensive plan update anyway.
Which, yeah, so that makes sense.
So more to come on that, but yes, that whole discussion will likely, you're not gonna get some. I do not anticipate some crystal clear recommendation from that subcommittee at the next case of PETA. I think you're gonna get this diversity of and it's gonna be, and that's one thing I do want to
Brainstorm ideas.
schedule. Because that was part of the reason we ended up with the subcommittee, was we had that on our agenda at the last one, and it was like, we had so much work to do. It's like, we spent all this money and 2 years of time doing this, and we're going to discuss the results in the next 15 minutes. That doesn't seem likely. It's like we need a whole meeting just to dig into that whole thing, I think. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens with that.
Would you
So
like to move to recess?
yes, I think so. So we will now recess for lunch unless there's any other burning issues, and we'll be back at 1 o'clock. So Zoom phone folks, we'll see you then. Let's see, we're gonna do this. Inevitable. Okay, it being 1 o'clock, I will call the meeting to order. Let the record show that all three commissioners are present. Before we move on any further, it would be my, I would ask or inform folks in the room that per proclamation 20-28 is a requirement that you wear face coverings. If you are unwilling or if you are unwilling, so I guess I need a statement from both of you. Let the record show there's two folks that are non-compliant. Are you willing, are you going to comply with that order?
I'm unable to wear a mask for medical reasons.
I don't have a exemption for that, because if you are unable to wear a mask for medical reasons, you do have an option of participating in the meeting via the Zoom format that does not require you to wear a mask.
Okay, well, can I submit my paperwork and then I can respectfully leave?
Certainly. I will do that. I would ask Mr. Wagner.
Give me a mask.
Okay,
Should be in the hallway. Oh, there's some on the.
There's some right there.
over
thank you, sir. Yeah, you can submit, and then you can,
Okay.
that would be fine. Go
Can
ahead.
you announce for the record what I'm submitting? I'm submitting a resolution from the commissioners of Palace County, two different ones.
Okay, I'm gonna wait and go ahead and give that to her. We will announce that during citizen comment, because we actually haven't done that. yet.
Okay.
So,
No, I have copies. Okay,
okay, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, with that, then we will begin with Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our door's been broken today. So. Okay, I would look for a motion on the business agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we approve the business agenda as presented.
I will second the motion. Okay, I have a motion, a second on the business agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes.
Has everybody had a chance to look at the meeting minutes?
I would ask to defer on those because I actually am not, I have a couple of things I wanted to address in those.
Okay.
I don't mean, okay, so that brings us to citizen comment. This is an opportunity for folks to address the board on items that we don't have a hearing on later in the day, which we don't have a whole lot here today. So I will start in chambers. We have two folks. If, okay. Do my timer, please. Sir.
Greg Wagner, member of C, citizens educated about solar energy. On March 16th, you commissioners discussed the appointment of citizens to the BOA. Mr. Anderson stated that these citizens, Elaine Harvey, Russ Hansen, Rocio Dimick, and Greg Wagner, have all applied. They are members of CEAS and they are biased against solar. Mr. Souter stated, yes, and if they are on the Board of Adjustments and a big solar issue came before them, they would have to recuse themselves, as they could not be impartial. None were selected. Multiple times this year before the solar moratorium, Mr. Souter has stated, I support industrial scale solar in Klickitat County. These statements indicate that he has a bias in favor of solar and should recuse himself from any solar decisions. During the solar moratorium commissioners discussion, Mr. Christopher stated, if I had 500 acres, I'd lease it to solar, take the $500,000 and move. On August 3rd, Mr. Christopher met privately with the Cypress Creek Renewable Solar representatives. He has a bias in favor of solar and should have recused himself from any solar decision during the moratorium. Mr. Anderson voted against the solar moratorium and met privately with Cypress Creek Renewable Solar representatives on August 3rd. He has a bias in favor of solar and should have recused himself from any solar decision during the moratorium. If citizens who the commissioners state have a bias against solar and cannot make an impartial decision, they cannot serve on the Board of Adjustment. How can the commissioners be allowed to serve on the BoCC and make decisions regarding solar when they have a bias in favor of solar? This seems to be an abuse of your power and your authority. You've said that multiple times that you are all in favor of solar, especially you, Mr. Souter. The people spoke overwhelmingly on May 4th in support of the solar moratorium and solar ordinance. Therefore, the solar moratorium should be reinstated and solar EOZ and solar ordinances be created, which covers the entire county and be approved by the people. You commissioners have violated your oath and the appearance of fairness doctrine of state law by not being impartial in your decision regarding solar. You should not be allowed to make any future decisions on industrial scale solar in Klickitat County. And I would also like to address, 2 weeks ago, I came in here and asked about, you have told us that there is no solar plans before the county, so you couldn't speak specifically on a solar plan. And I asked, how can Mr. Anderson write a resolution for an ordinance for something that doesn't exist? Mr. Christopher told me
Mr.
that-
Wagner,
that it
your
said
time- your
if.
time has expired, sir.
I do have one question I would like to ask. For the record, have I ever had a private meeting with you and CC? Like the one you're describing?
no, you won't do it even now. You already
No, I've
refused.
never been to your house to have a private conversation with you.
You've been to my house twice.
Me, you and your wife sat at that table to have a private discussion about solar.
You sat in my backyard and talked to me too.
Correct. Did we have one at that table right there?
Well, yeah,
Okay. so
when I
we
handed
did.
in the petition,
So we did.
that's fine.
Okay.
But you
And
met
I
with
only had
Cypress
one with the
Creek
solar company.
and they're a solar company.
Okay, correct.
They aren't
And I've had some
citizens.
With the citizens.
They aren't
with you.
citizens here.
I've had them with you, sir.
You said
Sir,
about
your
the,
time has expired. Does that conclude? your
That concludes my question.
Okay, we are still a citizen comment. I will go to the folks on Zoom or phone. This is your turn. If there is someone that wishes to make public comment, raise your hand or get my attention. Unmute yourself, *6 if you're on the phone.
29 numbers are dropping. Sherry.
Sherry Bosque, you have unmuted. Do you wish to make a public comment?
I do. Thank you. So I would like to finish up that conversation real quick as a citizen observation. Mr. Christopher has talked to Mr. Wagner. You've made that clear, but I, as a citizen, have not seen our commissioners act in favor of the citizens' voices that were well documented May 4th, asking in the majority by far to have solar ordinances for our company. So, or excuse me, for our county company, same maybe. So that being said, you might have talked to Mr. Wagner and gave him your fair time, but a solution has not been made for what the people would like in our county. And I'll move on. We want solar ordinances, and so that's that. So I have a question. Who is the Klickitat County Land Planning Commission? What governing body is that, and where can I find information on that hearing body?
Ms. Bosque, from the cuff, I assume from that title, you are actually referring to the County Planning Commission. Is that is the governing body on those matters?
Okay, how can I get information on this governing body and who's on this board that hears the cups or the conditional use permit?
It's posted on the website. I believe.
No, it's, if you're talking about a conditional use permit, that's the Board of Adjustment, which that's a different board. That's the 5-member board. I believe we provided this information prior, or you can, if
It's all on the BoCC website under volunteers needed.
Yeah.
It lists who's there and how to apply for one of those positions.
Okay, so why I'm asking about this is I've have received information for a 58-foot 3-inch by 21-foot steel bridge application that says that the shoreline conditional use application will be accepted until but that it'll be put before a public hearing with the Klickitat County Planning Commission. So that's not the BOA that we talked about conditional use permits are, and I'm sure my time will run out. So I'm very curious how this is by John Anderson. I believe that would be family to Jake. So Jake would have to recuse himself on this, probably, I don't know. So I'm just trying to understand who this Klickitat County Planning Commission hearing body is, since all I've ever heard is the BOA hears our conditional use permits in the county. But I guess we'll watch this one play out. And I have one last question. Has the Board of Commissioners, County Commissioners, approved any environmental studies off the Knight Road area for any solar companies? Have you approved any environmental studies for solar companies to go out off Knight Road area?
Okay, your time has elapsed, and I'll answer, at least to my knowledge, I am not aware of any studies that have come to the Board of Commissioners that we've approved anything.
I would agree with that.
No wetland studies?
A company is allowed to go out and conduct any studies they want, just like you can do any studies on your own property. Doing a study doesn't mean you have to come in front of the Board of County Commissioners to ask our approval.
And or to give us the results. So I don't know anything about it.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I would, just a little background information, the Planning Commission is a 9-member board of folks that are appointed by the Board of Commissioners. It is on our county website. There's 3 from each of the commissioner districts. They serve, I believe they're rotating 4-year terms. So they, so there's not, they don't all leave at once. So we just did do appointments. As vacancies come up, we do appointments. We had 2 that we filled those positions. That is, a planning commission is required by state law. It is in the Planning Enabling Act, which I did send you some time ago, that dictates the formation of a planning commission and how that's all done. I'm going to move on to, we're still in citizen comment. I don't want to use other people's time. I'll come back into the room and see if there's anyone else that wishes to provide public comment in person in the room. Doesn't look like it. So I will go back to the Zoom meeting. So anybody on a phone call or Zoom, please unmute yourself, get our attention, raise your hand. I'm not seeing anybody. No. So, all right. Well, if you change your mind, get our attention.
Did you send an email to Sharon, or were you going to send an email to Sharon that the board approved?
I have no idea.
Are you going to share? I just wanted to make sure it was either you or me or somebody.
Okay.
We'll continue what you're doing, I guess.
Thank you. There's those. This one. Oh, we fully. I was, but I didn't know. One had been signed. But.
I do have a question.
Sure. Go ahead.
Do you guys make a thing that says we have to get vaccines? Do you guys do that?
No.
You don't?
Nor
do
have
that?
we had any discussion on the topic.
Well, yeah, you did. Susan Kelsey was in here a couple of.
Sure. I mean, I would say we, as an employer, I suppose, could, if we chose to. We have not
No,
been.
do you guys make the recommendation that the county has to all be vaccinated?
Who, when you say the county, are you talking the
Yeah.
county employees or?
No, the county people.
Oh,
Can you guys make a recommendation that forces me to get a vaccination?
I do not believe so. I'm not sure under what authority.
Yeah,
would
I
do
don't know
that.
what authority we would have to do such a thing.
Well, I didn't have any idea either, but
Right.
you're doing a babysitting thing, and I would say that was past your purview, but so it was a curiosity thing more than
Yeah,
especially since Susan said she's against
Sure.
vaccine mandates, I thought.
Sure.
you
I
guys
took
can
that,
make a
I took
rule
those
out,
comments.
put Something in my mind, yeah.
No, I took those comments to be related to county employees, which businesses do have, I mean, they could
Okay.
mandate for, I mean, if you as a business owner wanted, as far as for conditions of employment, wanted to do that, you could do that. I would say
I own the quilt store. I'm the only employee.
Right.
I'm anti-vaccine.
but if you, right, but let's just say you had an employee and you were really pro-vaccine and you wanted to make that a condition
Okay.
of employment, you actually would have that right to do that for your employee.
But the county commissioners can't recommend that all county
No,
citizens be
no.
vaccinated.
I would say no, but cautiously, because I can't think, I don't know that we could, and I don't know that we can't. I don't know, well, first off, I'm never going to, for the record, but I, without
Are you just
checking
trying to get up some
legally, I
comments
don't
here?
know that. I can't answer yes or no because I don't know legally whether we would have that power, but I can't imagine where that power would actually come from to give us that power. So I would say 99.9% chance no.
Okay, good. I just was curious. I have a whole article that I looked up to read in case you guys said yes.
Oh,
Could we please get your name, ma'am?
Well, I'm sorry. I'm gonna spell it for you.
Great.
Devera.
Okay.
And my last name's Culver, Culver.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we are still in citizen comment. I will go, if there's anybody on Zoom or on the phone, *6 to unmute if you're on a phone, raise your hand, get our attention. Offer still there. Not seeing anybody.
They're already still recuperating from their weekend, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, well, we're gonna go ahead and just keep doing some work here. If you change your mind,
Yeah, but the only discussion we've had about the vaccine was the discussion you were here with the Susan, and saying that for the most part, we haven't discussed it, so.
there's nothing. You can look at them. We ship papers back and forth. Oh,
Is the supervisor signature.
oh, all right, thank you. Before I forget, then let's go ahead and take the written comments that were submitted. What I
I
was
did
doing.
email them to you.
Yes, thank you. These are just copies.
It's one packet. You need more.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I'll hand it all back to the effect.
And it is in your email too.
Yeah, I'm gonna read it on the. Just got new people joined.
Oh, okay, we are still in citizen comment. So if anybody wishes to, this is your opportunity. Raise your hand, unmute yourself, *6 if you're on a phone. I'm not seeing anybody. Okay. Just so folks, I guess, in the room or on this, we did have an individual earlier that was could not comply with the mask mandate as far as in the public meeting, and so did drop off their public comments and then respectfully left, which I appreciated. And what they had dropped off for public comment was a copy of Cowlitz County Board of Commissioners resolution not requiring vaccinations of county employees in Cowlitz County. And also a petition, looks like, based on this would be for this county to do something basically the same, looks like.
Mhm.
You have that, yeah, you're looking there. That's good. Okay, we are still in citizen comment. If there's anybody online, this is your chance.
Can I request what that citizen dropped off, what the resolution said?
It was a copy of a resolution, as an example in Cowlitz County that basically just stated that the Board of Commissioners in Cowlitz County were not requiring vaccinations for county employees. Along with a petition and I think a sample of a potential resolution that the board could pass in Klickitat County. I think any discussions we've had on requiring vaccinations for employees, the board has not been in support of that. So we are in effect doing the same thing.
And Sherry, this is what I see your signature on it, so it's the same thing that was provided to you.
Okay, I just wanted to get clarification. Would you, commissioners, be writing similar resolutions for Klickitat County?
I think that's something the board will have a discussion. I think from a practical standpoint, that is the position of the board now.
Yeah.
But the board will have a discussion later, not during citizen comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are still in citizen comment. So if anybody wishes.
Sherry, I have a quickie question. If you can, feel free to answer it or not answer it. It's your choice. Was this the petition that they were signing out on the protest last Wednesday?
So what I understood it to be was just a rally of people to have request medical freedom.
Right.
And I believe what I signed there was the resolution. It would be what Cowlitz County has adopted by their commissioners in their county. And that I was one of those signatures that yes, in requesting that our county commissioners draw up similar resolutions that as provided to you right now. And that's what I signed. How many people signed that? Curious.
I would have to hang on a second. I would wild guess 100, just based off the numbers that are on this. I haven't individually counted them, so don't hold me to that. It could be plus or minus 20, but I would say 100.
That's a good showing of voices. So I really do hope the
Well,
commission.
that's why I was asking if this happened in one day, because 100 signatures in one day is a lot better than 100 signatures over 4 months. So.
Yeah, you would have to ask the people who collected it. There was quite a few that happened at the rally of the freedom, medical freedom.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, we are still in citizen comment. If there is somebody on Zoom that wishes to address the board, this is your opportunity. If you just joined us, which no one has, so you know how this works. Yes, sir.
Well, I'd like to get an answer from you. When we all applied to be on the Board of Adjustments, you won't let us be on the Board of Adjustment. But yet, because we're supposed to have a bias against solar, and you can remain on the Board of Commissioners and make decisions about solar when you have a bias in favor of solar.
So let me ask you.
I don't understand how the rules are.
So
different.
what would be the, first off, you are, at least from my perspective, you are taking snippets of statements and weaving them into a narrative that supports your point of view, which that's fine to do that. What I have said repeatedly, I've said it multiple times, where I support industrial solar in Klickitat County. I have also caveated that with, because that is the actual adopted strategic economic development plan of the county, which I support, which has a whole bunch of things in it, including industrial scale solar, a whole bunch of other things too. So does that mean I can't make that statement? I would have to recuse myself on any item that came up that dealt with, that is mentioned in the county strategic plan. That doesn't seem very practical. It is also nothing is coming before me at this point. A conditional use permit will not come to the Board of Commissioners. It will come to the Board of Adjustment. And from a practical standpoint, if all three commissioners are not, have to recuse themselves, who is going to hear anything?
Hearings examiner.
I guess a hearings examiner
That's
is,
what happened under canvas, and why didn't it go to the Board of Adjustment?
Went to a hearings
because
examiner.
it went to a hearings examiner,
Why did it?
because the majority of the board had chosen to either say they weren't going to hear it, or they felt like they
Recuse
could,
themselves.
or recuse themselves. So there was not a majority of the board to hear. And so if that happens in the future, that's what would have to happen with any issue that came before the board. If the majority of the board is unable because they are biased or feel like they need to recuse themselves, that is what will happen.
So you think that you can make
I'm not going to
impartial
answer that. I
decision
am
on
not
solar?
on solar in general. Absolutely, I can.
So why couldn't I make an impartial decision as a Board of Adjustment member? You say you can, but you don't believe I could.
Because it would sit 100 feet away from your house, and I think that would
Right.
institute a conflict of interest.
100 feet from my house.
The property that we're talking about is on the other side of the fence.
Well, what happens when it gets near your house?
Obviously, I would be recusing myself if it was on
And
my
then it would
neighbor's
go,
property.
it should go
I
before the Board of
guarantee you,
Adjustment,
if
not the
somebody
Board of
tries to
Commissioners for a
make a
decision.
motorcycle track or
Yeah.
something on the neighbor's property, I won't be voting on that.
Right, Commissioner Anderson.
The reason that it went to a hearings examiner was because the SEPA was appealed.
Right.
Okay, and when the SEPA gets appealed, it would usually go in front of the Board of County Commissioners. But in the under canvas situation, 2 commissioners were recused, so it had to go in front of a hearings examiner. And what you do when that happens, according to the rule or the laws that Mochi found that dealt with the situation, it becomes a combined hearing
Right.
for the SEPA appeal as well as the
Conditional use
CUP itself. And that's why the hearing examiner heard both, because that's what he was required to do according to some obscure RCW that I didn't even know about because we hadn't actually been in that situation before. And that is the reason why. Now, yeah, that's the answer of why that occurred, okay?
But the CUP didn't protect the citizens at the under canvas.
This is, okay. This has been, we've been through several hearings already, and apparently you want to continue. You will have there is a process, there is a process for that. It is not during citizen, it's not during citizen comment, is not when that's not the
Well, it
correct.
hasn't been anything since May 22nd. when you rescinded
Okay,
the
we are
moratorium.
still in citizen comment
For anybody who has
for
not
anybody
spoken
that has
before.
not already spoken.
We have 1 minute.
Well, you
We have
allowed
1
Sherry to
minute.
speak a second time.
She asked a question and you
I
did
was
too, and
asking
we
a question
answered.
too.
I am still looking if there is anybody that wishes, I'm giving the opportunity. If there's anybody else that has not spoken yet, this is your opportunity. I'm not seeing anybody. And it is now 1:30. The time we've set aside for public hearings, public meetings, and bid openings. We actually have none. And so, excuse me?
There is no schedule.
Yes, that we have no schedule. This is a time we did set aside, but we have none scheduled. Which brings us to a department update, adult probation juvenile court administrator, Mr. Larry Barker. Come forward, sir. If you would.
Hi, Larry.
Good morning, how are you? Good afternoon.
Afternoon, sir.
I like your mask. Excuse me. I'm not sure what all you really want to know. Our case numbers are about the
Everything.
same. Okay. So our case numbers are about the same. We're running about 350 folks on the adult probation side. We're running almost 25 kids on the juvenile side.
Is that low numbers for kids? I mean, what are you normally at for kids? That seems low to me.
Well, actually, for juveniles, it's about average, it's about right.
Adults about right at 350 normally year over year.
That's usually what we've had. We had 750 when I first started.
Oh.
That was a handful.
How long do people usually stay on probation? What's the average length? of
So
time?
on the adult side, people are on probation generally for 2 years or until they complete all of their court obligations. So the court may order them to attend treatment, domestic violence panels, all kinds of things, community service. And so once they've done all of that successfully, then we will place them in what's called bench probation, where we don't actually see them face to face. They don't come to our office, but we do routine criminal background checks and just making sure they're staying out of trouble. And for the most part, that works really well. So on the juvenile side, 6 months is about the average when a kid comes to court and the judge wants them to do some things, so they're on supervision. So we usually keep them about 6 months. Some of the minor offenses will be 3 months. Some of the more serious offenses might be a year, but a year is just about the maximum unless they really screw up, and then we extend that. So that's about all the time that we have with them. So to be honest with you, I really missed that. That's where I started out, was working with kids. And even over there, occasionally I'll be able to find a kid that's not with their supervising probation officer for a minute, and I'll sit down and have a chat with them, which is what I used to do for many years. And I miss that. It's a good opportunity to get with the kids, find out what they're thinking, where they plan on going, what they're going to do. So anyway, and that's kind of the way we consult probation in both departments, actually, is we strike up a relationship with people. We talked about where they're going, what they're doing. Our drug court program is probably the most successful in the state as far as recidivism. Although that's going to probably come to an end. So Mr. Cannell doesn't particularly want the program anymore.
Which the alcohol treatment program?
It's actually drug treatment, but we include alcohol. But it's out of Superior Court, and it's people who have been committing crimes basically to feed their habit. So they burglarize a house, they sell the stuff to pay for their dope, and then it's that kind of people who have been in a just.
Do they only get sentenced to that? Is that like a diversion? It's a one time only, you get it once, and if you succeed, great. If you don't, fine. Or do people that reoffend get put back in that same program?
We have not had a person get put back in the program. I think it might be possible, but nobody really counts on that. We advise our clients that they don't have an opportunity to come back. I think if they had a smart attorney, they might be able to figure out a way to make it happen. But we don't have that much of a problem with them. Once we get them in the program, and that's a 2-year program, they meet with us every week. We UA them every time we see them, whether it's at home or in the office or wherever it is. So they know that we're going to be on their back.
What's the washout on that?
I'm sorry, couldn't hear you.
What's the washout percentage on that? How many people, fail their UAs?
Oh, it's drug court, so we kind of figure in that they're going to fail a UA once in a while.
Probably 85%.
Well, no, it's not really that high. Probably about 30%, I would say
That's, to me, that's super low for a drug.
we have
People that
five
have
and a
drug
half.
problem have drug problems.
Yeah,
So that's a low number to me.
it's it's a remarkable program. Works really well across the whole country. It just works really well. It gets people back on the straight and narrow. I've watched so many guys come in that are at the rock bottom. They get clean and sober, they get their families back, they get their jobs back, they get their kids back. And it's just an amazing transformation to be a part of. That's the most favorite part of my job, is sitting down across the table from these guys and watching them go from below nothing to having jobs and families and doing well and staying clean and sober. So that's why I keep coming back to work. It really is. And we have that philosophy in both probation departments. We want people to succeed. We don't want them back. And we do whatever we can to make sure that happens. So we have a 4.5% recidivism rate for the drug court, which is, I don't know anybody that comes even close to that. We're running about 10% for all the other programs, which is still really low. Most probation departments think they're doing really well at 40 and 50%. I don't like that number, and I would rather see people be successful and not commit crimes. Because committing crimes means there's other people out there, there's victims that are also suffering from what they're doing. So that's been our approach, at least mine, since I've taken over the realm or the reins of both departments. We make sure that the people are getting the help that they need, and we're turning lives around.
Would you, I wasn't taking notes when you were talking. You said 4% recidivism for youth and 10% for adults?
4.5% for drug court,
Drug court.
and all the other ones that are about 10%, both adult and juvenile.
Okay.
They're really low.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the juvenile probate as far as what the, what's the typical interactions, how that works exactly? Because I've often kind of wondered about, or not wondered, I mean, you've come in and we've talked about it before, but I just really want to understand what, your folks, what a typical day looks like.
Sure. So
Yeah, these are not, and I understand, these are not the honor roll kids. These are not, I mean, yeah.
we actually have a program for the honor roll kids that screw up and get caught at a party or something like that, or they steal some beer from them.
They didn't have that when I was a kid, and so
They just made
we
up
had
for
it
it.
all right. It was, yeah. My folks had their own program.
Yes, which was much fiercer than
Yes,
what we
yeah.
did with the court. Yes, I agree. That was always my concern. You're not gonna call my parents, are you?
Yeah.
No, we have a program for kids like that just occasionally make a stupid mistake. It's called diversion. We divert them from court. We handle them in-house. We can assign up to 150 hours of community service. We can assign a fine, which we never do, because generally, if we find the kid, we're actually finding the parents. Anyway, we find other constructive ways to keep the kids busy. We have treatment issues available, or options available to them, and a number of things that we can do with those kids. The recidivism rate on those kids is just about zero. They just hardly ever come back through the system. And then we have a group of kids that have committed felonies, more serious things. And so we have a group of kids that have committed, like I said, felonies or more serious offenses. Then there's a third group that really do the bad stuff. Those kids we end up sending to a state institution, kind of like prison for kids. And they'll stay there 3 months, 6 months, sometimes up to a year. And the state takes over from that point. They're the ones responsible for those kids. So the kids in between are the kids that we see on a typical daily basis. And those are the kids that have committed burglaries or assaults, things that are a little more serious. So we usually have them come in about once a week to the juvenile department. We meet with them, talk to them. We also are in contact with the schools or any other peripheral things, like some kids actually have jobs. It's kind of rare, but they do. And so we'll stay in contact with their employer to make sure they're doing all right. Like I said, the schools, parents, and we talk with the kids all the time, make sure that they're working on the goals that are set out for them. And if they have treatment, we're in contact with treatment to make sure that they are actually attending those treatment sessions. So we spend a lot of time talking to them, and that oftentimes treating these kids with a little bit of respect and an expectation that they're going to do well, not an expectation that they're going to do bad, which is what a lot of adults in their lives expect of them. Oh, you're just a screw up, this is blah, 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 blah. We expect them to do well. And so we give that expectation to them, and we make sure they understand that. And actually, for a lot of those kids, it's the first time in their life they've ever had an adult, I don't want to say on their side, but that's actually encouraging them in a positive way. And that's really sad. These poor kids come from some really bad homes. So we meet with them. There's a lot of collateral contact with other agencies and individuals in a juvenile's life. And that's typically what most juvenile probation counselors do day to day. We also have court once every other week for the criminal kids. We also have so now it's called, it used to be called CASA, Court Appointed Special Advocate. They changed the name, but basically the emphasis is the same. We recruit volunteers that work with little children who are assigned to the court. And these are young kids, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds, something like that. And these volunteers are specifically in charge of working and looking out for this child. They aren't looking out for the attorneys involved in the cases. They aren't on the parent side necessarily. They're not on anybody's side but the child. And so they help represent that child in court, make sure the child gets through the process like they should, and in the least harmful way possible. Those folks really have their hands full and have been doing an excellent job since we've been able to recruit a person to help our main CASA person, Ashley. She's just, I mean, it's just blossomed. We've been able to get volunteers all over the place, both ends of the county. It's working really well.
So do those CASA volunteers, do they have multiple clients or are they typically just assigned to a single?
We try to keep one kid per volunteer. Every once in a while.
That's why you need so many volunteers.
Yes.
Well, hopefully not so many, but I mean, I wish you didn't need any volunteers. But
That's right. I do too.
But the training is pretty intense.
pretty intense.
It is. It's very intense. And those people really have a heart for those kids. It's really amazing to watch what those people do with those kids.
Good program.
Yeah, it's a great program. I like it. Those are the kinds of things that keep me coming to work every day. For all these positive things that happen. If I had to just run around and chase people, putting them in jail, I don't think I'd last very long at this job. It's just, it's depressing enough for the few cases to slip through the cracks that end up that way. But we have different departments than what the rest of the state has.
So can we go back to your attorney is not interested in continuing that program? Is that due to the Blake decision and the fact that we're not expecting to have very many drug cases go through the courts anymore because of the new rules?
That's partially it. However, part of the Blake decision and the ensuing legislation states that the first course of action has to be to get these people in treatment somehow, or get them hooked up with social workers somehow. They haven't figured out that mechanism. So I've been trying to get with law enforcement, other people, players in the game. We're set up for that. We already do that with drug court. These people come in, we get them into treatment. We have the mechanism to make all of that happen. So I don't know where it's going to go from here because the ramifications of the Blake decision, the legislation hasn't followed it yet. I think there will be this winter. But enough of it hasn't followed to the point now where they've got all these people that have paid all this money that the state's supposed to pay back, but nobody knows how to make it happen. So there's millions of dollars that are going to have to be paid back to these people. And I don't know where that stands for Klickitat County. And I'm hoping that individual counties won't have to cough up that money, that that'll have to come from the state. That's what I feel. And
I'm hoping that.
We're hoping that.
Yeah,
we're
I
not highly encouraged that that would be okay.
But as a result, though, the Blake decision has put some question marks in a lot of drug type activities. So at this point, you know, if you're caught with a small amount of methamphetamine or heroin or whatever, it's kind of a free ride. It's sad to say because that's the beginning. That's where if we can snag them and do something with them, we can prevent a lot of this other junk from happening down the road. So it prevents us from having huge jail populations. It prevents the prisons from having populations. But we have to have a mechanism in place to catch those people. And I don't mean it like in a bad way of catching them, but a way to snag onto them and get them into the help and services that they need. And we actually have some pretty good services in Klickitat County, which has been very surprising to me. Before I lived here, I lived in Spokane and other big cities in the States, and resources we just took for granted. Public transportation, all those kinds of things. It never mattered. I come here and oh my goodness, we don't have anything. And so, but Comprehensive has done an amazing job with our drug and alcohol treatment programs. We're very satisfied with what they're doing and I hope they stay around. They're the only resource that we actually have here. We sometimes are able to put people in inpatient treatment. Just talked to a guy just a few minutes ago that's going to an inpatient treatment program tomorrow. He'll be gone for 30 days. That's as a result of working with our local comprehensive healthcare. So they've been the ones that have been able to find that bed for him and get him in after we've been prodding them. Right. It
Other
works.
questions for Larry?
I do, I wanna, I almost said circle back, I'm sorry, back up a little bit.
Okay, you can say circle back.
I did, no,
That's been forbidden to be
that's
saying
a
that.
forbidden, yeah, no.
Okay,
Yeah, let's circle back.
we'll circle back to that later.
You said there's about 350 adults on probation. You have 2 adult probation people, right?
Correct.
Or is it still a 1.5?
No,
Or is
it's
it-
2.
It's 2 full.
2 full, yes.
Because I know for a while, or if I remember right, sitting in the back of the room, it was 1.5 or something. And then how many youth probation officers do you have?
We have 4 total, but there's it's like they're divided in half. 2 that handle all of the court and felony cases, 1 that handles all of the diversion cases that you mentioned. And then there's actually the other one, the 4th one handles the truancies. And we have 2 programs.
Most of the like specialized,
Yes.
depending on what. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's times when kids are they're just in trouble, but they aren't in trouble breaking the law and they aren't in trouble enough to be classified as truant, but they or their parents need some help. That's what my 4th position does. He helps them, whatever it takes to help keep them out of the system and getting the resources they need. So for instance, this last year, he spent a lot of time visiting with kids at home to make sure they were hooked up to school with remote access computers and learning events to make sure that they were staying on track since school wasn't even open, so that actually. And this year he's doing much the same thing because there's some kids that are still choosing to school themselves from home. So he's making sure that they're actually doing that and then goes to their house to make sure they have the proper equipment, which is donated by the school. He's been actually very busy, busier than I thought he would be. So those are the 4 in the juvenile realm. And they all have kind of specialized positions. The 2 in the adult realm will handle anything.
I was gonna say, there's gotta be a broad range. There's so many of them there, so many probation. Yeah. Okay. Those are great.
Nothing else for Larry? No, that's it for now, I guess.
Thank you, and feel free
Go
to.
forth and do good work.
Oh, thanks. I'll see you on Thursday.
See you on Thursday.
Thank you.
Bring cookies.
Do not bring.
What's that?
I
Do
said,
not
bring
bring
cookies.
cookies. No.
I'm trying to get bribes. They won't let me have any bribes.
So good. Yeah. Have somebody show up. Okay, that brings us to Executive Director Derek Bryan from the Washington County's Risk Pool Programs and Services is going to give us an overview of the programs. This is the other risk pool.
And he is there on.
He is there. Okay, let me look. Good afternoon.
Hi, I'm here. Can
Well?
you see me and hear me?
Yes, we're good.
All right. Well, thank you, commissioners, for having me back out or giving me an opportunity to get back on your schedule. Thanks to Lee also for staying in touch with me since I was out in June. I think I was going to share my screen, so I'll see if I'm able to actually do that if I can. Let's see. If I start my slideshow from the beginning.
Yep, you got it.
Is it up on for you?
Yep. Yes.
Still?
Yep.
Okay, good.
We're all getting so good at this, so.
Yeah, well, I surprise myself every time because I'm
That's not like that.
still not feeling that good about driving. But thank you again for having me back out. I know last time I was out, I think it's really great that the county's looking at. We're not really a sales and marketing group, so this is kind of new to us. We don't go out and seek out new counties to join the pool, but we also understand sometimes our county members look at options. Other counties that are in the other risk pool look at options. So we don't really feel like it's a adversarial relationship with the other risk pool. We completely understand. So we appreciate that you're looking, and I appreciate the opportunity to kind of just tell you little bit about the risk pool. As I said, I was out in June, and at that time we were right in the process and sort of in the throes of renewing our coverage. We're an October 1st effective date or fiscal year. And so at that time, I think there was kind of an understanding, maybe I can get back on your schedule and share some final information with you that shows maybe not exact quote, so to speak, as they would call it, but at least give you some idea based on your worker hours, based on what we use for underwriting, to give you an idea what, if you were a member now in the risk pool, what that would look like. Because I know money is important and money is critical when you're looking at options. So see if I can make this slide keep working here. There we go. So I always like to start with this slide and kind of follow. When I first came here, we really decided at that point the mission statement of the pool was really what drives this organization. They created this pool in 1988. This was the mission statement, and it continues to be the mission statement, and it doesn't need any more and any less. Basically, we have three missions: to provide comprehensive and economic risk coverage, to reduce frequency and severity of losses, and when there are losses, to decrease the cost incurred in managing those. And so what we've tried to do as an organization is continue to make those our focus. And so as we move through, I'll look at these as I go. So you see this first one here is providing comprehensive economic risk coverage. Some of this will be a repeat for a couple of you. I know Chairman Sauter, I think, wasn't there when I was out before, so this is a good opportunity for him to see a bit of this, but maybe a refresh for the others that are here. We also are trying to organize this pool in a way that counties can join the risk pool or be members, even existing members, can be in the risk pool, can take part in the sort of required liability coverage, the general pooling program that we had when we started, but then with options to take part in property coverage, to take part in the cyber coverage, to take part in terrorism. And then I'm going to show you the crime coverage and optional excess coverage as well. And that way, some members may want to join the pool, but maybe they go elsewhere for a different type of coverage. It's not an all or nothing type of organization. So if I look at these, you've got four basically coverages here that I just described. Our general liability coverage has 20 million in limits that everyone gets when they're a part of the risk pool. We also have 5 million excess of that. So some counties participate in an optional, I think about 16 counties participate in an optional 5 additional $1 million limit. That gives them $25 million total in coverage. But the remaining members, the 10 others, only take the first $20 million. And there's various reasons, and I'll talk about that in a slide or two later about why one might choose that 5 extra $1 million. The pool carries a $2 million self-insured retention, so we have that control and ownership. We pay all claims that are the first $2 million. And I think there's a real benefit to that. One is there's no commission paid to our broker, for example, for that first $2 million because it's self-insured. And so there's no reason for them to find us coverage within that lower layer. We're not a heavily insured program. We're heavily self-insured, at least having a $2 million retention. We certainly are. County deductibles range from $10,000 up to $500,000. So counties can choose those. You take a reduction then in the price based on that deductible. Obviously, then you're retaining some of the losses yourselves. First party property, large limits, 500 million total. On that one, the pool only takes $100,000 deductible, we actually call it, but it's sort of treated like an SIR where we actually manage and adjust the claims ourselves. Same thing, counties choose deductibles from $5,000 to $50,000. Cyber coverage, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit in a slide later. It kind of blew up on everybody. It's gotten to be a really expensive coverage. Some of the big ransom cases and cyber hacking cases have been really expensive. But we have a $2 million limit per occurrence, 10 million aggregate. So 10 million for the total for the year. That's per member. That's not for the collective group. $250,000 pool retention on the cyber. So the pool takes the first $250,000, and then no county deductibles at this point. We haven't gone to the extent of asking members to take any deductibles. It probably wouldn't go to that we would ask them to. I think some counties may want to know what it would look like if they took a deductible, what that price difference would be. So it's something we talk about. And then of course, terrorism. The reason we have terrorism standalone, we have a separate coverage, is because terrorism coverage is excluded on general liability, property policies, and insurers. Obviously 9/11 had a lot to do with that. They exclude terrorism claims that are stemmed from terrorism. But those same insurers will offer terrorism coverage through the Terrorism Risk Insurance Act that the Congress has passed over and over again, which allows insurers to say, we're excluding terrorism, but for an extra premium, we'll add it back to the coverage and you can buy terrorism as an add-on. For years, we were buying that extra coverage and just saying, sure, we'll check the box that we'll take terrorism on all of our coverages. Well, when we looked outside at just a standalone terrorism coverage for the same coverage, the price was like a third of what we were paying by adding it on to those. So we now reject the terrorism coverage on all our other policies, and we just buy a standalone terrorism coverage. So it's very rare that you'd see a terrorism claim, but it's good coverage to have. We pay, I think, each member total for the terrorism property and liability, they pay about $1,500 a year each for that coverage, their share of that. So the WCRP, as I said, we just went through our liability assessments. And so this kind of gives you, I'm giving you kind of some general information about what things look like for our upcoming 10/1/21 effective date for the counties that are in the pool. We're a pretty simple organization. We try to make things simple, not complex. We rate members, and the members' assessments are calculated, and really they are all, when folks will ask, what are we paying? How is our assessment figured? Well, we basically use three main buckets that we are charging members for the cost of. One of those is our admin and operating budget. You can see it there as about a $3.2 million budget. That's salaries for staff, that's the building equipment, that is the all of the grant training, scholarship programs, all the things that we have for members as well. So it's all the admin and operating. We saw about an 8% increase in that cost. And the biggest reason for that, I'm going to talk about in a little bit too, which is we're now reimbursing for this KnowBe4 cybersecurity program, 100% reimbursement. So we had to add that into the budget for that. Insurance premiums are the insurance premiums we pay to the insurers above our $2 million layer. That came to about 6.2 million. We saw a 30% increase in our layers up above. One, because of a couple of large losses that we had and paid on, and sometimes those come through, and when they do, we pay them, and when they do, sometimes we see rate increases in the insurance layers because those losses were in the millions and were paid by partly by the insurers. So we saw a big increase there. Then the bottom left around 7 o'clock, the retained losses, that's the losses that the WCRP, with that $2 million SIR, we have to set aside enough money to pay for all the claims. That's a per claim cost. So we'd be setting aside money to pay for the claims that fall within that. So that was down by 9%. So about 8.9 million that we set aside and collect from the members. The capital funding, 1.2 million, we actually are trying to budget each year by adding to our fund balance so that our fund balance grows. And when you grow your fund balance, it allows you to take larger SIR. It allows you to put money into programs, increase pre-defense and those kinds of programs. So all in all, when you look at the large increase in the upper layers, but we saw only about a 5% total increase when you take all of the costs together. And so total assessments for all members is 19.5 million that we'll be collecting. Now, 1.2 million of that is that capital funding, just about the 3 o'clock on this slice, on this pie. So 19.5 minus the 1.2 would actually be a break even, but we actually added 1.2 million. The board wants to continue to add to that anytime they can. So the cost was actually more of about 0 or 2% as far as the total cost from last year to this year. But adding in that 1.2 million, we wanted to make sure we continue to try to build the fund balance. This is a sample county liability assessment. And I say sample because obviously it goes without saying, I can't say for sure what Klickitat County's price would be exact. because we'll need to look at a loss run and some of that stuff as far as, actually joining the risk pool. But based on the worker hours that I know you have, which is the second column in there, 491,360. And the base rate then, and I put deductible at 25,000. I wasn't sure what the county, but generally a county your size probably would have about a 25,000, maybe a $50,000 deductible. The higher the deductible, the less you pay to the pool, but the more you want to set aside to pay for losses within your deductible. The base rate, that 1.129, that's the base rate that everyone starts with across the board. So that was our increase or our cost per worker hour. So essentially, if you wanted to just do the math on this, you could take your total worker hours, you could multiply it by the base rate of 1.129 per worker hour. The modification factor, anything times 1 is itself. So a 1.0 is sort of a break even. Anything over 1 means you're having poor experience. Anything under 1, you're having better experience. So some counties, based on having really good experience, that 1.0 might be 0.8 or 0.9 or 0.7 even if they're having really good success. We want to make sure that they're rewarded with that. So then you would take the worker hours times the base rate and then multiply that by the modification factor. Well, if the modification factor is 1.0, then it doesn't change. If it's more, it goes up. If it's lower, it goes down. So a 0.9, for example, would be another 10% decrease. So real generic numbers that I'm giving you here. The deductible factor, that 0.92, so about 7.8% decrease if you take a $25,000 deductible. It's even less at a $10,000 deductible and a bit more of a percentage decrease if you took like a $50,000 deductible. It's not going to be significant until you get up into having $100,000 or $250,000 deductible. But if you did the math across here, you're going to get somewhere around that 511, 614. The only reason it may not be exact is because the base rate number, the modification factor, the deductible factors, there's some trailing decimal numbers on beyond the 1.129. For example, it's not just 1.129, it may be 1.1293764, whatever. So that's why sometimes the total assessment, but it'll give you a general idea. So this would be at your worker hours, an average member with a 1.0 modification, there's the total assessment of what it would generally look like. I'm going to dive on to move on to property here. Property, similar. Basically, we have the insurance premiums. We take a little bit of the operating budget and apply it to the property program, just so that there's some evenness among the chart, that what the costs are for that. Capital funding, we put 0 in for that. And then the insurance premiums, you can see we saw a 10% increase in insurance premiums. 4.8 million is what we pay to the insurers for premiums all above our $100,000 pool layers. So 10% increase in our retained losses. Again, when you have a $100,000 pool deductible, the 600,000 there that you see right around 2 o'clock, that is obviously going to be a lot lower. The lower deductible, the retention you have, and the higher it'll be, the more you take on. So you can see 10%, 10%, 10%. We're looking right around a 10% increase for the property program. So if I took a county such as yours with a total insured value, we divide it by 100. So it's a per $100. So you see that fourth column over from the left says total rate per 100 TIV, 0.149. That's the rate that sort of somewhere falling in the middle. It's really difficult with property to give you a general idea, to give you a solid price. And that's because we'd want to see where buildings are located as far as flood. We know that you have limited earthquake, if any, exposure, but maybe there could be some buildings in a flood area. We separate out the flood costs. And some of our members have seen an increase in that because it pays significantly because of the flood. We've had a couple of members actually even leave the risk pool because the flood prices through our program were a little higher. If you take your total insured value, which instead of a 967,000 there, it'd be more like 96.7 million, right? That's your total insured value. That's your vehicles, equipment, your buildings, your contents, marine, all of that. That's your total insured value. Multiplying that then by your rate per 100 gives you kind of a general idea. Again, this is very generic, and we would have to do a lot of work to figure out exactly, but I think it'd be awfully close at this assessment there of about 144,326. When you look at what most of our counties that are right in your range as far as total insured value, and also that you're not in heavily earthquake risk and you're not heavily in a flood risk, gives you right around $144,000. As I said, our cyber program, look at that. We had 147% increase. Now, what does that mean per member? Basically, our insurance premiums went up significantly. It went from about $144,000 a year for the group to $217,000, but it also required us to take a $250,000 SIR versus 100. So we went from 100 to 250 in our deductible or pool retention, but also added significantly to the premium. So kind of a double whammy there. The retained losses are the losses we've calculated will fall within that 250,000 looking forward. And so that's where you get our total assessment for all of our members, 567,500. We have always just taken the total assessment or the total cost of the cyber program and just divided it evenly among all 26 counties. We don't feel like that's working anymore because when it was really cheap, it was really cheap for everybody. But a small county versus a large county, we need to make sure that we allocate that right based on your size. For one county, a $10,000 or $20,000 charge is not too much, but for another county, that's a big chunk. And so we want to start working toward going away from the equal share allocation and going toward using some kind of methodology. Well, we're using operating budget, which I've inserted yours there. And that's not your overall budget with all of your capital projects and everything. This is just your operations budget, 18.3 million. We're starting to go toward using operating budget, but we don't want to just do it all at one time. So we're going to start doing it gradually. So we're still going to do partial equal share and partial operating budget so that eventually we'll go more toward operating budget until we use all operating budgets and no more equal share. But it's kind of a method for not having everything change all at one time and some people's prices just go sky high. We want to make sure that we ease that in over time. So average assessment for our members is running right around $20,000 based on your operating budget. I would, if you were a member now, you'd probably see around $19,257 for cyber. A whole lot worse than the $8,800 or whatever it was we were paying last year. But it could be a lot worse also. And I do believe we're going to start getting our arms around this cyber issue and start driving down the cost of that as well. I talked about the optional excess coverage, which is that 5 million on top of the 20 million. Basically, it gives you 25 million in limits instead of 20. Jumping right to the brass tacks on the bottom right is the price. So at least while you're looking at this or listening to me, you at least see based on your worker hours, you'd be looking at your share of that about $6,766 for 1 year, 5 million excess of 20. Now, some say, why the more insurance you carry, the more the plaintiffs are going to ask for. Probably some truth to that. We've had cases though, where we've had $25 million in limits. And if we had 20 million in limits, we probably would have gotten a lot more nervous and paid and maybe even tendered the limits. But when you have 25 on a case that's worth something in the 15 to 18 million range, it gives you that cushion to feel like you can actually do some negotiating and not feel like your limits are exposed. So to some, it's cheap coverage. The other thing is, as I said on the fourth item down there under Y, it says occurrence-based coverage. Occurrence-based coverage means that no matter when the claim occurred, that's what triggers the coverage. You'll hear a lot about claims made versus occurrence. A claims made coverage means that it's when the claim is brought against you, whoever your insurer is at that point is who you report the claim and who handles it. The coverage is triggered by when the claim is actually brought against you, not from when the damages occurred. On an occurrence-based, what triggers the policy that applies is based on the date of loss, right? So auto accident, a slip and fall, a termination, an abuse case, it goes back to when it actually occurred. And the reason I bring that up is because 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you might have a case pop up from many years past that is occurrence-based, which means it's triggered by what the coverage was back then. Now, at 20 million versus 25, we're talking about still a lot of money. But there was a time when everyone bought $1 million policy limit, and those limits are no longer going to satisfy a plaintiff, even if that's the only limit they have. So it really is a judgment call on what the risk appetite is for the county, whether they want to participate and buy that extra 5 or just stick with the 20. As you can see. Oh, did you have a question?
No, sorry.
So just gives you a general idea. And we had a big increase in that. Again, I mentioned a couple of large losses up into the millions. These things happen. I'm going to talk about that a little bit as well in a later slide about the aftermath of those claims and what we're working on legislatively. We also have just decided that we would like to start offering a group purchased crime coverage. Now, some counties, and yours may as well, buy crime insurance or have a crime policy. We had a handful of members that did buy their own optional or buy their own crime coverage, government crime. We had quite a few counties that did not buy crime coverage. And when we asked why, they asked why they need it. And so here's a great example. The why there, I have 3 items listed. Number 1, money, cash, and securities are not covered under both a property and a liability coverage. The reason they're not covered under a liability policy is because you don't make a liability claim on your own loss of your own property. It would be a property claim. There's specific exclusions to a liability policy that'll say this does not cover property owned by the county. With that said, then you would go to your property insurance, buildings, contents, vehicles, equipment. Well, there's a specific exclusion in almost every property policy that does not cover cash, money, securities, that sort of thing. So you have an employee that steals from you for a 10-year period. That is money that is stolen, and it's there is no coverage under the property policy and under the liability policy. And so a lot of folks don't realize there's a gap there between those two coverages. There is some cyber coverage for social engineering if it's the result of a cyber claim. But again, a theft by an employee over a long period of time. It's kind of I've used the example, someone drives their car through your building, gets out, and damages property, but steals money out of the safe as well, and then takes off. You have a lot of things that are covered there, but the money that was actually stolen is not covered. And so we want to it's very important that all counties really look closely, make sure that you have that gap. You may never need it. We offer, as a group now, we're looking at this, all of our members are going to be participating, or at least we've gotten almost all of them that have said yes. We have a $2 million limit per member, a $25,000 deductible per member. Obviously, it's going to be a rare occurrence that you find out that you've been stolen from, but if it's $1.5 million, which we've seen, 25,000 of that would be the member's deductible. It's well worth it. So we do have a fairly large deductible for you. Total cost is $40,000. So it's a minimum premium. So basically it's $40,000 no matter how many participate. Based on everyone participating, it was about $3.35, whatever, 33 cents per employee. So at 241 employees, which is what you guys have, generally speaking, you're looking at about $877 per year. You can purchase an additional 1 million. Some counties do want to buy more, but having some is better than nothing. So that's what the price looks like for the group purchased optional crime. What we're finding is every single one of our members that does already buy crime coverage is getting a way better deal by group purchasing it, which would make sense also. So something to think about. If you don't go with us or you don't have it, hopefully this just helps you maybe educate you about maybe finding that. So that's some pricing. As I move on, is there any questions on the pricing? You might have questions at the end, but I don't want to not give you a chance to ask anything.
No, you're good.
We're good.
Okay.
Keep going.
The second piece of our mission statement is reducing the frequency and severity of losses. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, but basically we made a decision a handful of years ago that I believe that risk management is the answer to most of our problems. Claims handling is important. Efficient claims handling is important. And the claims staff can only do so much if the claims keep rolling in. It's kind of like you can't exercise your way out of a bad diet. You can't you can't claims adjust your way out of bad risk management. It will eventually eat you up. And we believe that risk management, preventing losses, is critical. So we took a whole new approach, more data analysis, sitting with the members and showing the graphs, showing what the numbers look like, where their losses are happening, how we can help drive those down, on-site visits, encouraging collaboration and outreach. Risk transfer is critical. There is no better risk than transferred risk, meaning you sign a contract and you are asking them to take on all the liability, indemnify you, hold you harmless. Don't take on the risk and take on the liability. So if you contract out, transferring that risk contractually, we've seen it many, many times where we get a lawsuit filed against a county. We take the lawsuit and the contract that they were entered into and hand them to the vendor or the other party and say, we expect that you're going to defend and indemnify us. So risk transfer is huge. We focus on targeted risk management for 2 years. I've got 2020 through 22 there because we really took a hard look at law enforcement. And it wasn't just, we felt like we were constantly sort of chasing the symptoms versus trying to get to the core issues. And someone really had some great ideas when we were having some real in-depth risk discussions here about law enforcement. One of those was, it's about leadership and it's about getting the training and education to the right law enforcement leaders so that they can train their staff. Most of the time, something that happens where there potentially is a claim, they didn't know, they didn't have the education, they didn't have the training. So we're really looking at law enforcement as a leadership. And so we've been putting in a lot of training and pool casts and opportunities to get law enforcement with everything that's going on legislatively. You know, we would love nothing more than to not see some of these bills that are just so harmful passed. But we also aren't just going to shrug our shoulders and give up. We're going to do whatever we can to educate and to help figure out how do we combat some of these legislative changes. And of course, more education and training is critical. It's all about preventing losses from happening.
Okay,
Our
we have, if I can stop you for just a second.
Sure, of course.
Yeah. This is Rob Van Cleve. One of my duties is the risk manager for the county. One of the things I'm interested in finding out about, it may be later in your presentation or you can address it, you know, when you're done, is the data analytics and the sharing of results. I'm just curious to what kind of tools you employ to allow the risk manager and the prosecuting attorney to have real-time information on claims. Do you have monthly reports? Do you have a web portal that we can get in and see the status of a claim at any given time and what's been done, you know, where it's at? Can you talk about some of that at some point?
I do. Yeah. In fact, in a slide or two, I'm going to dive into the claims piece and I'm going to show you actually a graph with some claims data on it. But to answer a couple of those questions, yes, we have not only a dashboard that we use that was so. For a lot of years, we've had a claim system that's sort of a bit outdated. We didn't have an upgraded version of it. We were just kind of getting by with it. But we also wish that we could do more with it. Well, one of the things that we are now able to do, we did a pretty significant upgrade this year, and we're getting in the newest version of the claim system, which will actually do two things that are right with what you said. Number one, it allows counties access to that data. It may be read only. It may just be seeing how the file is going, where the reserves are, where the notes are, but giving some of our members that access so they can actually have a login and go into our claim system and see how's my claim going, what's happening, what are the notes, what's the latest that's been done on the claim. It's going to be critical when we have that. So that's a huge upgrade. But one of the things that upgrade brings, and we knew it was coming, was data analysis and being able to, with clicks of buttons, bring up a graph and show what your loss is and show where your employment claims are and show what departments your auto claims are coming from, and being able to really yourself actually drive and look at that. In the meantime, we knew that that was a ways off a couple of years ago. And so our risk team established a dashboard, a data analysis dashboard on our website through our members only, but it's very accessible. Basically, it's kind of a workaround or a bit of a Band-Aid until we get that claim system finalized and upgraded and going. But it's a dashboard where members, same thing, you can go in, You can select your county and start narrowing down where your losses are coming from. But you can also look at other members and see where losses are. So I'm going to get to that in a little bit, Rob, but great questions. That's exactly what we're working on.
What's the time frame for the full meal deal?
October 1st. So just a few weeks, we're hoping to have it up and running. We're doing a lot behind the scenes to get everything migrated, and we're really shooting for a 10-1. One of the biggest reasons for that is we're also very heavy on paper still. We have paper claim files, but the system that we are going to is much more conducive to going to a paperless claim environment. We don't hardly even get US mail anymore. It's almost all PDFs and emailed attachments and claim forms that are submitted through to us. And so we realized, we need to go paperless, and this is the best opportunity with this new upgrade. It also has a great document imaging system. So you can take a PDF, you can drag it and drop it into the file, put a file note that applies to that PDF. And like I said, having members be able to log in and see what's happening is going to be critical as well. So 10-1, Rob, we're looking at.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Commissioner.
So our member services program, I just spoke about frequency. We've got reducing the frequency and severity of claims. It really comes down to member services. We have an awesome member services team. We have a member programs focus, which is, and I'm going to talk about those individually here in just the next few slides. Scholarships, cybersecurity awareness, reimbursement. I talked about reimbursing for the Know Before program. We have a risk reduction, kind of like a grant program, but we don't call it a grant. But the Lexapol reimbursement, 80-80-80, I'm going to talk about in a second. Look at the training, 41 webinars, 2,400 attendees. We have online, still in person. We do a lot of training. And so there's a significant amount of education that we try to bring for the members too. I mentioned the word Poolcast. Poolcast is kind of a name we gave when it was actually before COVID and before all this Zoom technology was so prevalent. We actually felt like we wanted to make more of a connection with our members without having all these online or in-person trainings. We wanted to have an opportunity for members to just pick up the phone, call a conference line, and listen in while we have a discussion, while we speak with a special guest speaker, when we talk about an employment issue or employment claims. And so it kind of was born this Poolcast, which after COVID hit, Zoom started being the new way that we did it. So it was virtual. And we would send a Zoom link out to all of our members and say, hey, on Thursday, the 10th or whatever, we're going to have a Poolcast where we're going to have a special speaker. You don't have to register. You don't have to pay. You don't have to you don't have to even say you're coming or going or attending. It's free to attend, and it's through a Zoom link. And so then folks can just click and follow and watch, a half hour, a 45-minute, an hour. We just have done a bunch of them on law enforcement legislation. We're doing 4 law enforcement legislation Poolcasts with up to a couple hundred attendees have been present. The first was a general overview of the bills, the several bills that are really the most impactful for law enforcement from a risk management pool standpoint. Then we're taking those bills individually and having a few Poolcasts to focus on those specifics. So we've had some great success on those, but just ways that we're trying to find ways to drive down claims. So just our programs, we have a scholarship program. We pay for registration, sometimes some like a hotel or maybe if there's books or something involved, but scholarship similar to how you'd get like a college scholarship. It's basically a scholarship program. If there's a training that's not a WCRP training, but you want to attend, we've paid for all kinds of things for members to get training through other sources where they wouldn't have the money to do or can't get through the budget at the county. They can submit the request to us and we can get their scholarship approved. So we do several scholarships throughout the year. For example, LRI, the Labor Relations Institute in Yakima each year, will give out one and sometimes 2 per member to pay for their registration to go. This is brand new, this cybersecurity awareness reimbursement program. Basically, we recommend Know Before because it's kind of the premier and a lot of folks use it and have a lot of good things to say about it. But it's not an absolute requirement. There are other programs out there, but Know Before is sort of the premier. Basically, we decided let's pay for every single member 100% for their cost for their Know Before program, which is like a fishing education training kind of program. I'm sure your IT folks know exactly what this is. It's 100%. Sorry?
We have it.
Oh, good. So we would pay for it. So basically, I think the average is $11 or $12 per employee. I think for you guys at what I say, 241 employees. So you're looking at probably a few $1,000s that you probably pay annually. Well, it's 100% reimbursed by the risk pool. The risk reduction program, again, you can get up to $5,000 a year for sort of like a grant. A lot of times it's seed money to put toward a project or a purchase, but some counties will use it to put security cameras out where things are constantly being stolen. They might fix a handrail or sidewalk, or they may apply it towards something. As long as it can reduce risk and drive down costs from liability and property or cyber, we encourage it. You can get up to $5,000 if the project or purchase applies to our targeted risk management. So we kind of focus on frequency, severity. We pick like 3 items a year that are our targeted risk management focus, things where we're seeing losses coming from. You can get up to $3,000 a year for non-targeted risk management related programs or purchases. The 80-80-80 Lexipol reimbursement program, this kind of just all of a sudden just developed here. And I know a lot of states that Lexipol works with have kind of taken this as a model. Basically, for a long time, we were trying to find ways to reimburse for this, but it was hard because if you just pay for the Lexipol program as a risk pool, but you don't verify that anything is being done to use it, that it's not being utilized, we found that we were just paying for some of this, but not really seeing that it was being used at all. Well, they issue policies and they also have daily training bulletins. And so we came up with the idea that if you can show us that you've issued up to 80% of the policies that are available to be issued by subscribing to Lexipol, and you've utilized 80% of the daily training bulletins, we will reimburse you 80%. We used to pay for 60%, but we upped it to 80% as long as you can show that you're issuing 80% of the policies and taking 80% of the daily training bulletins. We've had a lot of success with that. So I don't know if you use Lexipol or don't, but for example, if it's $10,000 subscription, you'd get $8,000 of it back by doing the 80%. So that's another great program. Just like Rob's question on the claims, now we're getting into decreasing the cost incurred. Of course, risk management is critical, but you still have to have a good, solid, efficient claims team that can manage claims. So we actually, a handful of years ago, we felt like there was just some real heavy pressure on claims and litigation, especially in Washington state. It's a heavily litigated state, high verdicts that are just ridiculous. We're just really still struggling to kind of get our hands around that piece. But we're also not going to give up. And so we decided we're going to try whatever we can to combat the expensive costs of litigation. We tightened up our claims handling policies. We're trying to be more efficient. We're trying to avoid litigation. Look, we're not afraid of litigation, but we certainly despise it. I mean, it does not benefit anyone by going into litigation unless it's absolutely necessary. It should be the exception, not the norm for litigation. And so we've really been trying, if you have an auto claim where your county employee rear-ended someone, why should that case go into litigation unless there's a real reason? And it's probably going to be a dispute over the damages that maybe someone has. But otherwise, we're trying to be quick and efficient about evaluate, negotiate, settle, get a case closed. Try to keep it from going into litigation. Nobody wins when you do. And then being conscientious about the costs as well. Lawyers are great and they do great defense work. We have some of the best that we work with, but they get paid a lot too. And so we have to be conscientious about the cost of litigation, the necessity of the number of depositions and the amount of work that we're going to do and whether we're going to try a case and whether you should settle a case now versus settle it right before trial. Well, you've already spent almost all the money you're going to spend on defending it right up until the trial. Maybe there's some costs throughout the trial. But if you can settle it now and avoid all the defense costs, then you should. We try not to just pay because it will cost us money to defend. There's a precedent that gets set there. So it's always a tough call. It's a tough business decision. Sometimes it does make sense to settle if you've got the exposure, but a lot of times we find ourselves resolving cases just because it's sort of the certainty of a resolution. I put duty owed, duty breached, approximate cost. That's sort of this negligence theory. Basically, almost all claims should be handled with these four things in mind. One, was there a duty that was owed to this individual or business or whomever that was damaged? If there's no duty that you owed, then case over, in our opinion. We didn't owe you a duty, and so you should have no. It's like if you tripped on your one neighbor's property but sued a different neighbor. That neighbor's going to say, I didn't owe you any duty. You weren't on my property. So you got to get first past whether you owed this person or business a duty. Did you breach the duty? If you did, was the breach the proximate cause of their injury? And then, of course, what are the damages? Are they reasonable, necessary, et cetera? So we try to do that here at our pool, where we really look at every claim that we get. Was there a duty owed? Was it breached? Was that breach the proximate cause? And then, settling obviously for a reasonable amount. We started handling really aggressively in-house, fewer lawyers, fewer independent adjusters, really kind of owning the files and owning the work that we're doing ourselves. And we've done a really good job of that. This is where the question came up from Rob about the data analysis. So this just gives you a general. I obviously don't have Klickitat counties, but when the time comes and if there's a loss run, we can certainly do the analysis on that as well. But this is going to be similar to what one would see. Now, when I go visit or when we show counties we have a second slide that will not be all counties. You can see this is the top 10 allegations for all counties. We would actually show this for an individual as well. So we would kind of overlay and show them, here's what your costs here's what your losses might look like compared to the whole. And a lot of times they're similar because obviously our losses are going to be general losses, but it is nice for some counties to see, hey, we're having way more vehicle claims than others, or we're having way more road claims than others, or whatever it may be. So, or employment claims. And you may say, we need to figure out how to manage that risk. The blue columns is the cost. So it's the dollar, the severity. And then the green line is the frequency, how many claims. So obviously road maintenance, for example, right? Not as high in cost, but it's going to be much higher in frequency. So the number of claims will be much higher. You can see the far right axis there. It's running right around just under 200. And that's because with road maintenance, you're going to see pothole claims, paint striping claims, that sort of thing. The vehicle operations is obviously oftentimes a loss leader when it comes to claims. Vehicles, there's lots of them on the road. There's lots of law enforcement vehicles. There's lots of public works vehicles. It's the nature of what we do. You can't not be on the road, so you're going to have claims. We try to keep the cost down on those, but we have seen some significant losses as a result. And we've had some success, though, in other areas, such as some of our land use, the jails. We really focused heavily on jails over the last several years and have seen a real decrease in the cost and the numbers of those. So this would be an example where we will show, here's frequency, here's severity, here's the number of claims, here's the cost generally for those. So you can kind of see what drives most of our losses. This just gives you a general historical, just to kind of see. It's probably not, it's only relative, I think, to compare to another of our same size and makeup. So it's really hard to say, well, what does another pool's claims look like? It's really hard to compare those and say that it's not really an apples to apples, but this just gives you a general idea of the work that we've done. We had kind of a real, I guess you could call it the COVID reduction. Things slowed down for sure. We were able to close a lot of files. So our total open claims and litigation went down quite a bit. You can see there the 240 for both, then down to 204, 203. We recently jumped back up, but that is largely due to some bigger cases that we've had where multiple counties are affected and we've opened up multiple claims for it, or an individual county where maybe there's 7 or 8 claims. We just, from a file standpoint, we don't want to lump those all into one claim, so we would open them up as multiple. I still think that 233 is probably high. It probably is much closer to the 200. Then you can see the dollar amounts, the reserves, We've lowered those costs. We had a little uptick there. I talked about some large multi-million-dollar claims we paid out on. Right there on that March 4th, 2021, you see the 16.268 million under reserve for indemnity. That was because of a couple of big claims that we ended up raising the reserves on and needing to pay out on. But then we dropped back down pretty quickly. So total, all in all, as of right now, we're looking at about 233 open claims. That includes litigation and claim. And keep in mind, that's not claims above members' deductibles. That's every pothole, that's every snowplow hitting a mailbox, that's every person driving over paint striping, and every fatality and every large claim as well. So 233 total claims for the pool, and about $9.4 million in total open reserves on those files. So a lot of really good success that we've had. As far as what's on the radar for us, courthouse campus security has been a big one. So we actually have a couple of our staff that are on the courthouse security task force, participating with kind of a group made up of several groups, King County Judges Association. There's several groups. We're on that as well, trying to figure out, you shouldn't be able to put on a backpack and just walk right into a courthouse, right? You should have security. But it all comes down to money, and that's really hard sometimes. And so we're trying to find ways and helping, how can we get some of the state funding and some even federal funding to, and I know that there is going to be some funding coming. I don't know in the end that it's going to be a lot when you start dividing it up, but it's on our radar for sure. We always focus on employment claims. It's been we feel like we've had a lot of success with it. I hate employment claims. It's kind of like Public Records Act claims. I don't mind losing, but I don't like losing on a technicality. And I feel like a lot of employment claims are the result of a technicality, right? With public records, you have 5 days to respond with an acknowledgement and a time frame that you need to get the records. Then you start gathering the records and you keep track of the time frame, and you redact or you have exemptions that apply, and then you provide the exemption log. It's pretty straightforward. Now I'm making that a lot simpler than it is when you've got thousands and thousands of records, but in a lot of ways, employment is very similar. There's a technical way of handling employment. And a lot of times we'll see rash decisions, improper decisions, not going through like a pre-defense. We have a pre-claim, pre-defense program that can be utilized to help make employment decisions. So we just really feel like employment claims have gone down a lot for us, and we're just seeing a lot of success, but it's still definitely, we're not out of the woods when it comes to employment claims. They're getting more and more expensive, and it just seems like juries are more and more leaning toward the employee. I guess we've all been an employee that didn't like our boss at one point, but there's got to be a better way to litigate employment claims. Law enforcement legislation I talked about. I won't get into more detail on that. Joint and several liability. I think I talked to the commissioners when I was out in June about this real briefly. It's something that a lot of folks don't know about. Joint and several liability, in the real lay description, is if there's more than one at-fault party that's at least some degree of fault for a non-at-fault party's injuries, both of those or all of the at-fault parties, regardless of their percentage of liability, they all financially have to contribute until that injured party is made whole. What that means is that even if you're 1% or 5% or 10% responsible, but you just so happen to have a lot of money, and the other person who's largely responsible doesn't have money or has minimum insurance or whatever, you're going to have to pay for the whole thing up until that person is compensated or you also run out of money. Joint and several liability mostly applies to like road claims or auto claims typically. An example would be those claims we paid out on, the large multi-million-dollar claims. You have an individual driving a car with passengers in the car. The passengers, they have an auto accident, they have an accident. Speed is a factor. There's lots of reasons why that claim occurred and why it happened. The driver of that car is probably 80, 90, 95, 99% responsible, maybe all responsible, but you don't know how a jury is going to come back. The two injured or killed parties that are passengers, they're innocent or fault-free. And so their claims and their value of their claims have to be paid collectively by the at-fault parties. So the county, for example, could have been found to be 5% 1%, 20%, whatever, for road maintenance, for not salting the roads, for not putting up a guardrail, for not clearing trees. The list goes on of what it could have been. But because the driver of the car either has no insurance or minimum insurance, and it's a $20 million verdict, the county ends up paying the entire verdict. And so joint and several liability is very damaging to the insurance industry for sure. And it can be very impactful on rates and on costs. And that's why we saw such big increases in our costs. So we're looking at ways to try to get some momentum and traction with the legislature on at least educating them. It may take a few years to keep educating about how impactful joint and several liability is. And it's all good and fine when it's government money or taxpayer money that's being used to pay multi-million-dollar verdicts or settlements. But what if I've earned money my whole life and saved tens of thousands of dollars in a bank account, and then I have that same accident where maybe someone turned left in front of me and they found me 1% at fault because I was speeding or whatever it may be, right? I could end up paying and spending all of my money for this fault-free party because the person who's mostly responsible doesn't have any money. And so there's a fairness there. And it's something that we're looking closely at, this joint and several. It's the reason we paid those large multi-million-dollar claims. And it's the reason our rates went up significantly. Property losses, we're just always looking that, you know, if the liability industry is a multi-million-dollar industry, property is a multi-billion-dollar industry. There's billions of dollars. We have $3.5 billion in total insured value. You're one fire loss on a $3 or $5 million building away from seeing huge increases in premiums and huge costs. So we're really trying to focus on property claims and trying to prevent those large property claims, especially fires and stuff. Cyber, I already talked about. Ransomware, it's a big one. The insurers are starting to limit ransomware coverage. They're starting to limit social engineering limits. So we're trying to focus on cyber as well. And that's why this reimbursement program we're doing is critical as well. So I think I've shown you this slide before. I did last time I was out, but basically we're financially very strong. We do a really great job. We've built a fund balance. We try to keep that and use those funds for adding programs, for keeping rates stable. So when the market sees a huge increase, we can use fund balance. I talked about putting $1 million into fund balance and actually adding $1 million to our budget. Well, there's been years where we've taken $1 million from our fund balance. So we actually collected $1 million less from the members and used fund balance to help so that we keep those rates stable instead of these large ups and downs that you see with insurance. We just believe our hands-on risk management is going to be critical to the future, not just the immediate future, but long-term. And then I talked about the training and programs. We have high limits. We have a large self-insured retention, which we really believe gives us a lot of leverage and a lot of ability to make decisions on our own with our cases. We're not heavily insured, and therefore we're not heavily reliant on what the insurers want to do with a case or with a claim. So, with that, I believe that's it. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer or return to any slides that you wanted me to.
Thanks, Terry.
I would ask.
Question. Go ahead.
Now I'm asking you to maybe see if Mr. Cornell's on. Cornell might have a question, may not. I don't know. What's the question? Anybody in the room that might have a question?
Is there anything right now? I did have a question, and I will also ask if the prosecutor's on, if he had some questions as obviously part of our risk team. But as we, obviously we're with the other pool, there would be as we, we're just trying to be good stewards of county resources and look at our options. If we chose and we were what would the process be for changing pools? And I've been through this before, so I know it's a lengthy, there's a year. Basically a year. Is that, if you could just quickly walk me through what that would look like?
Yeah, of course. I think this probably comes down to what I assume is that you haven't yet put in your 12-month notice or whatever the notice requirement. So you've got that long lead time, which is great. I will tell you this, I think April 1st would be a date that we would really want to focus on at the WCRP here. And the reason for that is that's when we then start gathering and providing to the markets and the insurers and all of the data that we send for them rating us. We send our broker our statement of values for all of our buildings and contents. We send them our loss runs. We send them what our membership looks like. So then the insurers start pricing our programs. So then by July, when our board meets and makes a final decision, they have the final prices and the final quotes. So between, if you're going to, for example, if you were to put in your notice, and I know that I believe it, like for us, for example, we use April 1st as our deadline. When a member puts in their notice here, we tell them you can rescind that notice by April 1st. But after that, we really have to move forward as if you're in or out, because it's critical when we're renewing the pool and starting to prepare costs. So I think that the same could apply, that if I'm correct and there's a date for putting in your 12-month, I think we could start. What we would want is to look at loss runs, get the actual statement of values, which shows all the buildings and contents and all of that. We use actuaries, and we would probably sit with the actuaries. Probably by end of March, we have a board meeting. And by the end of March is when that board meeting, we would want the board of directors to accept new members into the pool. And so some work will be done to lead up to that, where we would say it's our recommendation that possibly Klickitat County would join the risk pool effective 10/1/22. And we would put in front of them all of the information to show why that we did our due diligence also in bringing in a member to the organization. So I kind of feel like if there's going to be a notice put in with your current pool, then we would want to get loss runs, statement of values, all that stuff to really start looking at, making sure that those modification factors and stuff that I gave you, that they would actually wouldn't adjust one way or another, like a 5-year, 10-year loss run, something like that would help, I think, as well.
Okay.
You say you start on 10/1. Is that your calendar year? If your people switch groups, is from 10/1 to 10/1 kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's a month or two off from what the other risk pool does. I think they're at 12/1, maybe something like that. So yeah, there's a little bit of a gap there, but you're right. 10/1 is our beginning of our fiscal year every year. So for example, if you would almost have, we would probably talk about pro rata, or you would, from a cost standpoint, figure out how that would make sense. But yes, 10/1.
This is Rob again. Is there a chance that you wouldn't accept Klickitat County into the pool? So if we gave the notice and then you said, no, we're not interested, now we're
out in the woods
now we're out in the
somewhere.
woods. So, no, I'm just.
Yeah, so a couple things. One, I have to say, yeah, I mean, of course, there's going to be a chance. If you send us a loss run and they've paid out millions of dollars in claims over the last few years, it might be really concerning. And so I can't say without seeing that, but all things being equal, I think the WCRP doesn't have any particular preference one way or another as far as, we don't want new members. I think as long as the losses are what we would consider to be acceptable and reasonable. The other thing I would suggest is that you might want to look at, if you do put in your notice, is it conditional and can you rescind that? And if you can, I don't know for sure if it is with us because we give that April 1st deadline to then rescind your withdrawal. So it'd be my suggestion that you maybe verify that, then you'll feel more comfortable if you say, okay, we're going to put in our notice written, but we can rescind that if there's a deadline for doing so.
Thank you.
That was on my list.
Okay, any other questions? And then I'd also give, if the prosecutor's on, if you had any questions that you wish to ask.
No, I don't. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. That was a very thorough overview of the programs. I think we'll be discussing it, and I guess we'll be in touch. And you certainly know your program, you know your product. That's
And he said he wasn't a marketer.
Yeah. No, it was. There's several things in there I could say amen to as far as the some of those issues, but in the interest of time, I won't do that. So, okay, well, thank you. As I said, thank you very much for that, and we'll get back to you.
Of course, and if you have any follow-up questions, don't hesitate.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. Thanks.
to move us along to our next item, which is under unfinished business. These are findings in support of the board's decision last Tuesday to deny the appeal and uphold the SEPA responsible officials determination for SEPA 2021-20 and granting preliminary approval to short plat SPL 2021-19, which is a proposal to divide a 21.39 acre parcel into 2 lots. The applicants are Gary and Judy Gottschalk. Just before we go on to that, yes.
Did you want this back?
If you want to keep it, I can make another one, or I have it
Thank
on
you.
mine as well,
I'll keep it.
Okay.
Thank you.
because you might be needing it later.
And I did see, I don't know if Denise is on.
Yes, she is.
Okay. Good afternoon, Denise. Yeah, you,
Muted and muted again.
there you go.
Oh, I'm here.
Okay, good. I just wanted that if there was any.
I'm here to support or answer any questions.
Okay. I looked through the draft findings. They seem like
Resolution.
they seem like they captured the discussion and the intent. So.
That's you two.
Yes. Yeah, wait a minute.
I have a problem.
Yeah, I realize you have. So I'm open to a motion if we want.
You got any discussion? You read the review?
I did.
And look good to you?
It looked good to me.
Okay. I'm gonna make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to accept the findings in support of the board's decision on Tuesday, August 31st, 2021, to deny the appeal and uphold the SEPA responsible officials of official determination for SEPA 2021-20 and grant with preliminary approval for short plat SPL 2021-19 to divide 21.39 acres into 2 lots, the applicants being Gary and Judy Gutsch.
Okay. I will step down and second that motion. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay.
Hey,
Okay, motion passes by majority. Okay, that's that.
So
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Denise.
One thing for the future though, so if one of us votes against, like, because right here, we've already made the motion that, last week we made a motion. And that was, in essence of the findings of support and all that. So now all we're doing is adopting what we've already done.
Right.
So when you're adopting what we've already decided, is that an instance where all 3 of us could agree to it because we're agreeing to those?
if you agree to the findings, I would say yes. If
Well, that
you
was
don't
what I
agree
was
to the
saying.
findings, then
Because
I would
it's
say
2
no.
separate motions.
That's why the
Right.
solar thing, we changed the findings so that all of us could agree.
But we also, in that instance, we also, all 3 voted in favor in the first place.
It theoretically, you could still be opposed and
accept
be
the finding.
right,
Yeah.
accepting the
And
findings.
that's where I was with the solar, is I disagreed with your direction, but I agreed with the edited findings.
Got it.
So you don't want to go back and revisit. this.
Unless you want to re-edit the findings.
No, I think we're good. We're good. I heard Denise, this is Brett.
No, I'm.
No, okay, we're good.
I'm listening. I'm ready to defend.
You're locked down, Denise. Keep going, you're fine.
You're fine.
We're being consistent,
Yes.
with SEPA appeal planning process.
Yep.
Okay, I am now going to move us on. Thanks, Denise, to Human Resource Administrative Director Rob Van Cleve. Pre-budget preparation update.
Good afternoon, commissioners. There's a few other things that I have that I'll start with first. We would like verbal permission for Jeff King to fill a vacant communications officer position. Employee transferred to another department internally, and so he has another opening. So he's like,
Top openings over there.
so it's budgeted and covered. It's just vacant.
Yes.
Thank you. On the budget schedule issue,
Easy now.
I've been caught.
on the budget schedule issue,
Do you need a break?
too much coffee or-
Not enough. Not enough.
we were able to move everybody that was scheduled on the 16th of September to one on the 30th, a couple departments on October 7th, and Public Works to the 14th. So we were able to move everybody
So are we canceling the entire 16th, or was it a half day, or is it just gone now?
full day. I think it's up to you commissioners,
Yeah,
but
no.
the chair's gone. So we've moved all.
I have a board of directors meeting that we just forgot about.
So I will update the budget calendar.
Okay. Interviews were scheduled tomorrow, 9, 10, and 11, so I'll join you tomorrow morning. If you want to get here a little early, we can go over the questions, and I've got your packets ready with the scoring sheets and all that stuff. And I took the questions y'all sent, and we came up with 10 questions, so we should be ready, good to go there. And everybody's confirmed their attendance tomorrow, so that'll be good. And then the question that we wanted to ask you about was a process question, not a decision today. If the commissioners were to want to add a COLA based on some level of the CPI for non-represented employees, at what point in the budget process would you want us to bring that forward? I've asked the consultants, different consultants have different views on it. If you in fact accept and adopt the market study and you don't do some level of CPI, it starts to diminish the market study already because it's based on 2021 data. So if you adopt the study and then don't do any kind of COLA or CPI and the other 11 counties do, then we start to whittle away at the market. So I've asked her what her recommendation would be. She hadn't got back to me yet, or you may not accept the salary survey, and in which case you may or may not want to consider some level of CPI.
When has the board historically decided on CPI?
We've done it all over the board. Depends.
That's the reason I bring it forward is last
Yeah.
year was then after the budget was pretty much set and there was concern we didn't want to do that, so at some point you factor it in the overall budget discussion. And if so, when? And that's kind of what I'm not trying to pin you down on a CPI or a
I
COLA.
just want to make sure that it's in the budget numbers, so it's not a supplemental next year, ideally. Whenever that needs to happen, I'm open.
I mean, would it be after all the presentations? Would it be, in conjunction with the salary survey presentation, which should be sometime early October? I think that's our target. They're working to get that.
I definitely don't think we can do it before the salary survey is done. I like to have, all the available information that's there. And it's not very hard to, think about that COLA, the regular where the COLA has been historically. So like, I'm gonna be thinking about it the entire time through anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we do it at the end, if we do it in the middle, the main thing I want to see is that salary survey, because, we can come in and bring our budgets, but if we're going to adopt that or not adopt that, that's gonna swing those budgets pretty immensely.
Yeah, I'd be in favor of, I agree as far as like, we're not gonna adopt a budget at the end of the year that doesn't have it if we're going to do it. Where you're not gonna go, because that's not a real budget. It's like you've now adopted a budget that is inaccurate, that you're gonna have to fix in the first quarter or some, because we've done that. Sometimes that is simply, it's about kicking the can, to use my seatmates terminology, where it's there, there's this liability hanging out there. And I mean, there is some reason for
Sometimes you
that.
have to do it.
Well, sometimes you do have to do it, but sometimes it is also that if you front load it at the beginning, there is no reason to have to meet it's amazing. I can tell you the times that the board has done it after the fact and made people try to fund. We never had to fully fund the cost because departments either through reductions or things, they covered a percentage of that CPI out of their existing budget. And so overall, it was a net savings to the county. Because if you front load it where you're like, oh, the CPI is going to cost this much, and you just automatically put it into the budget, it removes all incentive from trying to meet, if you're trying to keep things tightened down a little bit. And so that's the tool you lose, but it is where it's like if you're giving people a 2% CPI and I didn't give you 2% more, I just didn't even put it in there. That's a liability that's out there, and the budget really isn't balanced when you adopted it because you have this liability that you can't cover. But if you just put,
as long as it's in by the time we're done, and we can all add it in at the end, that's fine too. But I kind of like Jake. I'd like to see that or handle that when I see the salary survey, so I can kind of get a full grasp on everything. And October's not too late to add it into the budget when we do it. So.
And it won't be unlike the unions. I mean,
we don't know until we're done negotiating what those numbers are.
So it'll all kind of hit about the same time, and that's fine.
All that great news all happens simultaneously usually.
and I have a ballpark figure, but
Never say it out loud.
Never say it out loud. Just because we're in negotiations, or we will be. So it can be anywhere from nothing to something.
I thought you were getting ready to say something, but that is your way of not saying anything. Yeah, it's somewhere between nothing and something. Yeah, I mean, I would not entertain the discussion at the very earliest until after we get the survey.
Okay. Good. Well, that way we can plug it into the process and not make sure we don't get past it or miss it. And then say, oh, we got one more thing we forgot to. Trying to avoid that. Okay, thank you, Commissioner.
We had some public comment today come in. There was an example of Cowlitz County where their commissioners signed a proclamation in essence saying that they will never, under no circumstances, enforce vaccine mandates. And that's the last thing I would ever want to do, is enforce a mandate. But I'm a realist, and I know that if the state or the feds want to put the screws to local rebellious governments, the way that you do that is with money. And so one of the things I was wondering about is it would be really difficult for me to sign something like that, because whenever I usually say never, it happens. And so what I need to know is that according to our budget, if the state went and said, you're not going to get any state grants unless you institute our policies that we say is best for everyone. And we're now forced to look at a situation where we lose all of our state funding. And how difficult would that be to Jen to figure out how much money that would be gone and what percent of our workforce would we have to cut if we wanted to be the rebellious church?
I can give you that number before you leave today.
And
What
then
was that? I'm sorry.
I can give you that number before you leave today.
Yeah, because you've got your whole grant.
Yes.
It would be a huge number, and it would be certain,
I think you're part of that.
painful areas like seniors, painful areas like health department, public works.
I believe so. I would imagine, I would separate federal from state, but I
Most
imagine.
federal funding goes through the state. So
I know, but
That could be a
at
bigger
least
number.
looking at state, because I don't know if the feds have enough horsepower to implement that countrywide. I mean, you imagine why you won't see that in states like Idaho and stuff.
But I imagine indirect federal dollars would be the pass through, and then the state
Right,
could
into
really.
the state.
I don't know that the
Send down that.
state can put, I don't know that the state can put stipulations on federal pass-through dollars, though.
Oh, yeah.
I think you'd be surprised.
Oh, yeah. Once it gets into your hands,
Your
it's your
coffers,
money,
then it's.
and you make the rules. So that's just what I want to be able to weigh, when people come in and they're like, you need to sign this. And it's like, well, then this is what we could lose, 50% of our workforce if we
Don't.
Yep, give me that document back or just need to print it.
I know David's,
You already have a copy, you're good.
Oh, yeah.
I know the PA is on the phone. My interpretation of what the governor and the state union came to an agreement this weekend, which did not block the mandatory vaccinations on his decree, but it just built in some issues about how long they have and steps they have to take and what happens if they don't, and exemptions and those kind of things. But I think people were waiting to see if the state union was going to try and actually block the entire mandatory vaccination, but they settled. And that was not part of the settlement.
Surprising.
So,
I hadn't heard that, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's more to it, and David may have all the details, but I was just listening to the news and it said that over the weekend, they reached a resolution, but I don't think it included not being required to get the shot. It was just all of the impact of the testing and getting the shots and the timeframes. I think everybody was waiting to see how that was going to turn out, so.
For discussion with the PA later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, next up, discussion regarding renaming the building department after removing code compliance and other compliance matters.
Are we gonna rename it code compliance only?
You know what?
We could just take the building out and make it code compliance.
No.
Oh, so you want to remove the code compliance? Oh.
And so
supporters.
Yeah.
that would work. Rid of the.
So have we gotten because there was some earlier, and this would be, and I apologize, I didn't do tons of homework over the weekend because it was a holiday weekend. But when we had left this, there was some discussion about the necessity of having code compliance housed within the building department.
And 1927, what 1927 says is that we are charged with enforcing the building code. That is what I do under Title 15 already.
Right.
So that's not saying that code compliance or code enforcement as a program has to be under the building code. That is saying that every county or city has to enforce the building code, and that if you don't, you have to contract with someone to do it, but we already enforce the building code.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
that's what
That's
that's
what the investigate,
Right,
when they
right.
show up, so.
Okay.
right. That's what, plan review, permitting inspections, that's what that does.
Because that would inform the discussion if
Right,
it had turned out, no,
right.
you can't actually
But yeah,
move it out of the department,
1927 is
then I
saying-
don't need to change
yeah,
anything. We don't need to
it's
have any discussion.
speaking specifically to the building code,
The
which is
building code.
already what we do.
Right.
That's Title
Okay.
15.
So even if a year from now we move it back. I'm
No.
saying we will.
No,
We can rename building to whatever we're renaming it and add code compliance later if we wanted to move it back.
We
No.
name whatever, we may name our departments as we wish.
right. But I don't want people to be confused
Right.
because now it's somewhere else.
Right, and that's.
So it
I think
seems
we
more
need to correct that
appropriate.
For the time being anyway, until we figure out what we're
Yeah.
doing with it.
So like building permitting and inspections, or, just building department, I mean, something to kind of help the public not be as confused.
I'm open to suggestions. Or you make a presentation, see if we like it, how about that?
We've come up with either the building department or building permitting and inspections. I mean, those are the two that seem the most logical.
I don't like building permitting and inspections because planning does a lot of permitting too. So,
But not building permits.
well,
No, but
you
is there
were
a comma there or a semicolon or?
Yeah.
building department.
Yes,
sounds fine to me.
short and simple building
Yeah.
department.
That's what I refer to you as. so.
Exactly, and that's what a lot of people call us
Yeah.
anyway. is the
Talk to the building department.
So,
Done.
okay, and then just building director. I mean, that's what everybody calls me anyways. So,
Right.
all right.
Directors, strip out the other, we never said the last part of it, the rest of your
Yeah,
title.
I mean, it was on business cards
Right.
and
You will
on,
have to have some new cards printed.
well, we'll I'm gonna wait for the new address.
There you go.
But,
Oh, yeah, they're gonna redo all business first.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yay.
we'll have new address. So, okay, so that's done. What other topics?
The other topics, yeah. The fine packet of garbage that I handed all of you
Yes, I
guys
saw that.
already.
Return. No.
Okay,
sorry. Did you not get one?
Oh, there was one over there, probably buried in their stuff.
When did this come out?
This morning when you sat down at your desk.
Oh, never mind, it's under here.
Dig back through. It's like an archaeological.
It's an archaeological, it's way too much information. It's pretty much the same information Lynn just gave you. But in paper form, we're going back to the manufactured
Right, old
housing
Yeah, old.
Did you get the email I sent you?
today, yeah.
Okay,
Like I said, it has some of the RCW, the same thing.
it does, yeah.
So essentially, what it comes down to is, like Lynn said in that first RCW that I highlighted, we can have an ordinance that says that all manufactured homes coming into the county be new. We can have an ordinance that says they have to be put on a permanent foundation. We can say that they have to apply with all standards, which would be energy efficiency, snow load type of stuff like that. There's a lot of things we can do, and it looks like it's, and that's for manufactured home, which is a double wide. No, single wide is a separate deal, is it not?
Single wides can be manufactured homes, but some areas, what they have done is said it has to be a new, that email I sent you just to review kind of breaks those
Okay.
definitions
So
down.
if you look at the second page of our CWs, I have it copied there, where it says is comprised of at least two fully enclosed parallel sections, each not less than 12 feet wide and 36 feet long. That is the definition of a
Of
manufactured
a
home.
designated manufactured home. So what some areas have done is, say if it's not a two sections, that it can't be less than 14 feet wide or something like that, because say ADUs, they're gonna have to be a single wide for them to be
Right.
approved.
To
But
some
then
degree.
what the kind of proposal language I gave you to review before, we did a presentation or whatever. We could use the language of two sections that are no less than,
Right.
12 by 35.
The reason this is being-
Unless you get a conditional use permit, well, because an ADU is a conditional use permit.
Right. The reason I talked to Ron Dish, who is the L&I guy that does the inspections of our mobile homes. And from him, and this is not, trusted and verified, we are the only county in the state that allows this garbage to come into our county. Yakima County is also really bad, just not as bad. Everybody else does not allow this quote unquote, his words, garbage to come into the county and create code compliance problems later. The other counties, according to him, again, this is trusted, verified, have all put in stipulations that say you have to meet current building code, you have to meet current energy efficiencies. That way they can't bring in this 20-year-old single wide junk, throw it on a few blocks and, make it a chicken coop or whatever they're trying to do out of it. We don't have a ton of people in the county that are doing this. It tends to be the same people over and over again. But if we were to have a public hearing on this, I guarantee you this room would be absolutely full from people in Centerville, absolutely furious about this topic. So hence the reason I'm talking to you today.
And gave me homework.
Been doing the homework to give you to see if we can possibly move forward and put some kind of restrictions. I don't want to, some people take, might get an old manufactured home from somewhere and bring it in and bring it up to code and make it a nice livable house, and they saved money, and it's a nice low income house, let's call it, if there is such thing. And I don't want to restrict those at all. I want to restrict the people that are bringing in garbage with no plans of fixing it up and making it a HUD house, you might say, to be a slumlord and or park their chickens in it, or, you know, whatever. And that's where we have to come up to the rest of the places, and because same deal, we have rules that say you can't bring these properties, I want to say vehicles, but these houses in and put them on your property until you have a placement permit to bring them into the county and put them on your property. You probably can't have a placement permit until you have a well and a septic. They're sitting on the property right now.
Yeah.
This is flagrant violations. And it's, yeah.
In a lot of areas, what they've done is they've said designated or new. Designated being that it was constructed after June 15th of 1976. Because the ones prior to that are considered mobile homes. And that was before, you know, some of those HUD
Right.
rules started coming into
But I
place.
don't know that I necessarily want a 1977 brought in either. So
Correct.
we need to go. a
But
little
then
more.
there's that other language that they've also used is that it has to have wood, shake or shingles, exterior siding that, you know, looks similar to conventional site-built homes. They've added some of those things in addition to
Right, but
new.
same scenario, you could, if you, I mean, you could, by law, we could limit it in any way we want. You can, I would imagine, say it needs to have 2x6 construction as opposed to 2x4. That way it can meet the R value of the insulation on the wall. And you could limit dates of, you know, the quality of what's coming in here. That's all I'm trying to do. I don't care how we get there, whether we do it via snow load, whether we do it by, must be a double wide and not a single wide, because by the letter of the law, you can restrict non-new anything. So if we want to say, you know, you can have used double wides, just not use single wides, because that's the problem.
But manufactured homes would never meet snow load in a lot of the areas. They'd have to do a roof over.
But they could meet energy efficiency, which is where Illinois says
Theoretically.
the other counties have done is the energy efficiency.
Because the newer ones are built with the wider studs.
So the first question, I want to be trust but verify.
Right.
That we have the authority to restrict placement of manufactured homes to only new models.
It's right here in the RCW.
Well, I also know, I realize that, but I also know RC, especially around this topic, there's like, except for, and
There's
this,
footnotes, but then there's also the MRSC topic on the matter, which limits it to 5
you
items.
didn't give me that.
You didn't get the MRSC, sorry, there's your MRSC.
So it's on that.
I would have brought my whole pile if I.
Which lists.
That's all, again, I'm not
They're
saying I'm
listing the
opposed.
same 5 topics is that RCW,
Right.
where you can restrict.
I just know there was some pretty, you know, this has been a while, but you know, there was, you know, places that tried to even limit, like you just couldn't have manufactured homes and you're not allowed to.
Right, and that's why they wrote that RCW is to make sure you can't do that. Because they were trying to outlaw all, period, no matter what.
And there's a Senate bill that I have printed out too. I just did not bring that pile. Because I thought we were waiting on this.
Yeah, no, I figured we got a minute. I want to
Yeah.
make sure that me and you are not spinning our wheels on this.
True.
If we haven't like brought on them, then there's no reason for us to.
Right.
continue.
And this one says a city or town, but there's another one that says county. May not adopt an ordinance that has the effect directly or indirectly of discriminating against consumers' choices in the placement or use of a home in such a manner that is not equally applicable to all homes. And then skip that, however, except as provided in subsection 2, Any city or town may require that it be new.
Except as provided in what's in subsection 2. That's the part I want
Subsection
to
2,
know.
a city or town, right, a city or town may not adopt an ordinance that has the effect directly or indirectly of restricting the location of manufactured mobile homes in manufactured mobile home communities that were legally in existence before June 12th, 2008. So
you're dealing about mobile home parks.
so the ones that don't qualify to be put on your 5 acres, we can't limit those to be placed in a manufactured home park that was legally created before 2008.
Right, and I'm not looking at restricting anything in a manufactured home park.
So you could bring in an old manufactured home
Just put it out.
and put it in a manufactured home park?
Because by this RCW, I see that they say yes, you
They
can,
say yes, you can, and you can also.
I don't
live
like
in
it.
RV.
but I can't change that.
If it was legally created before June 12th of 2008, any that are created after that, you can limit
So that's the subsection.
for the age of homes, yeah.
So you can still limit and not take 1977 model.
Right.
You can go back to 2008.
What do you think? Do you think putting a limit saying that new manufactured home placement permits are gonna have to be for a new manufactured home? Because we're getting quite a few placement permits a year, don't we?
A lot, yes, we're 100 and something
What
already.
percentage
Yeah,
of
are
those
not-
used?
Are used.
No, I mean, we don't separate those. I haven't separated those out. I'm just saying placement permits. I could go through and see how many are new versus how many are not.
I think that would be really important, actually.
Okay,
Because if half of them are used and people are getting placement permits, then there's demand out there for affordable housing that's coming from somewhere else.
And can you do some more, a little digging on as far as the verifying Mr. Dish's statement that we're the only county?
I
Because
can.
I am,
Mhm.
I don't like being the only county for anything normally.
Actually, you kind of love it.
Sometimes.
Yes, I
Else
can.
in the parade when that old mobile home's getting
Yeah,
hauled out
yeah.
and it's coming in.
Yeah,
New versus used. Okay,
And I'd be curious on
Verify.
the age of those used ones too.
okay.
Are these, 2014 models? I don't have a problem with 2014 models.
yeah.
I have
Because
a
I'm
problem
curious,
with the
what are people
1985
doing
model?
with, because there
Yeah.
is a aftermarket as far as used, because I see them advertised
For $4,000.
something that maybe it's 5 years old and they're building a house
I can
now and
do,
they're,
like-
so those must be going somewhere.
I'm fine with putting a date range on it to get rid of. some
Yeah,
of
you
that
want to do
old
like say
stuff.
2019 through current, just to kind of give us a,
I would like to
broader
also
picture.
make sure that we change our county code to make sure that it is set upon a permanent foundation.
that has to be tied down.
It has to be tied down.
That's an
but
L and I rule.
I want it on a permanent foundation with the sheet board down below it where it actually looks like a real home and doesn't have raccoons living
Right,
under it.
I mean, all
Still
of
has
them,
the tires on the chassis.
all of them have to be,
Yeah, I can show you pictures.
all of them have to be blocked and tied down and have skirting.
And if I would have walked through, like this last weekend, I could have walked through a couple and taken some pictures for them. Because it was open.
So, verify L and I, get the date ranges of,
Like I said, I don't want to limit people's ability to bring a decent quality manufactured home in and live in it. And bring it up to looking nice and putting it on a permanent foundation and putting T111 around the bottom side of it, and you have a nice cheap home. I have no problem with that. If you want to bring in a junky ghetto trailer,
Well, who's to pick? Somebody could have trashed a 2020 model
that's the thing. If you
versus
don't-
somebody has a 1980 that's in great shape. They've been taking care of it. How are we going to decide who gets to say what?
Well, that's where if you don't put it, like I said, either a date range or bring it up to standard or a permanent foundation. Or something to make sure they're not just putting it on blocks, leaving the trailer, the tires attached. And, bought some $4,000 piece of junk out of Sherman County and brought it up here, charging people $600 a month to live in it. And the floor's about to cave in. We're creating slumlords. At least in my side of the county.
Okay. Also known as affordable housing.
Okay,
We also have liability for allowing people to do that too, so.
well, if they're, to me, that, well, I'm gonna, you know, if there's an issue with our placement permit process that is allowed, because again, you have to meet some kind of minimum standard. And if you are, we don't have any liability.
What we have in place now is if it was built prior to that June date in 1976, they have to get a fire life safety inspection from Labor and Industries.
Right, that's where the
And we
liability
have to
is.
see that certificate before we can issue the placement permit. If it's after that, it's either installed per manufacturer or NC standards. And we don't have anything current in our language saying it has to be this year or newer, or has to look like this.
But you can't, but you should, if everything works right, you should have to comply with those minimum standards. If I'm placing a 1985,
Right, let's put it this way, if you're building a house on a piece of property, you have to comply with all of her current standards. And then I can just whip in a 1985 trailer that doesn't comply with any of that on the property right next door to you. How is that fair to you building a house?
because it's not, and again, you're preaching to the
Right,
choir.
okay.
I'm playing the devil's advocate of
Right.
that house when it was manufactured met the current standards, and it's no different that if I'm building a new house next to a house that was built in 1985, a stick-built house,
Or 1905.
or 1905, is that fair? Oh, I have to comply and they don't have to.
I'm not
because-
trying to make anybody that has one of those old houses, hey, you have to haul your house out of the county. I'm just saying no new
Right.
old houses
Right.
are allowed in the county, which is what all the other.
Yeah,
counties
again,
are.
you're preaching to the choir, I'm
You're trying to
just,
cover your tracks. and
well, it's
confirm
just
and
like
verify and see what you're trying to do.
there is, right, I mean,
And the other issue is how many of those that are junkers that are coming here, are they actually applying for a placement permit?
right.
Got a couple. There's a couple that brought this to my attention.
By the same applicant.
Okay, I'm open, I mean, I'm open to the.
Bring back more.
So yeah,
Yeah.
bring the
Okay.
info they're asking for and hopefully.
I'll go do some
we'll
more
come up with some
prepping.
answers.
Alrighty. I will get that information.
Thank you, ma'am.
You are welcome.
Saying I provided them,
Yeah,
information.
you're,
Probably gave you too much information.
Chairman, I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda with 8 items.
I would second the motion.
okay, I have a motion and a second on the consent agenda, all 8 items, any discussion on those?
Oh,
Is that a yes? There's a
I
discussion.
wanted to discuss fines. I didn't look at my thing. Go ahead, sir.
All those in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye, motion passed, consent is passed.
no, I wanted to know what the violation schedule was for code compliance stuff, because it's on our agenda tonight. Another day.
Another day.
Bills, you want bills?
Yes, please.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion, we pay the accounts payable warrants in the amount of $159,683.75. And the payroll benefit warrants in the amount of $0 for the date ending September 7th, 2021.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to pay the bills. Any discussion on those?
No, I went through every single one of them and they all looked great.
Great. The auditor will be happy to hear that.
Every single one.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passed. Brings us to elected officials report, prosecuting attorney, Mr. Cannell, do you have any issues that you wish to discuss with the board in open session first, I guess I would take?
I'll be down in a couple of minutes, gentlemen.
Okay. We are running slightly, I guess we're running 10 minutes ahead of schedule, so we will.
Board pending?
Board pending, I hopped over that just because I was like, we had the morning board pending session, which seemed quite fruitful.
I did provide a draft letter.
Oh, yeah.
And then you also had another one too that I had sent you. That was the.
Land
Land trust.
preservation.
Yeah, we did.
I approve of both letters.
Let me read this one.
I have a few more.
You already read it. Okay.
Appendix for you if you got time.
Oh, well, go, yeah, I can listen.
You can multitask.
I can read and listen.
After the board's discussion last week about the bulletproof vest, I did reach out to Under Sheriff Meir And it mentioned to him that the board would essentially voted to advise them to make sure that those bulletproof vests are in the surplus sale. I have not heard a response.
Okay.
You know, Thursday, get me a response. My personal phone number is not on the emergency contact list. And I noticed that there were some other phones that were extinct. They're not even here now. Can we update the emergency contact list whenever you get free time? Perfect, thank you. That's it.
Do we need a motion to sign that?
Yeah, do you want a motion to sign this letter? or
No, we
what?
don't need-
We could just sign it. Okay, yeah, it looks good to me.
Looks good to me.
Can you make a real one
Yes, I will, yes.
before we leave today? It's fine.
Yes.
And
Prosecutor?
Before, when we let them know, we should let the bottom.
Yes,
Say bottom.
yeah,
Before we cut.
before we leave.
They move
Prosecutor
for
Canal?
approval authorization to post a legal admin combination victim witness assistant position. So the legal admin assistants, 36, hopefully steps 1 through 5, and then the legal admin 1, 2, or 3, depending on qualifications from where it's 35 to 37 steps, 1 to 5 if possible.
Okay, you gotta start out at 1 to 5, do you?
We just corrected the last two to go from 1 to 3.
Really, first,
But
but
if go 1 to 10, would that be better? or-
no. No. You're.
My email's not going. Ding, 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 ding. Yeah.
I didn't hear anything.
Is this to replace a position for somebody that left, or is this a new position?
Yeah, I received resignation effective the 15th.
Okay.
No,
No,
the
the
more
only-
elaborate setup to get a new FTE. I can assure you that.
I would, because of shortages in his staff. In this regard, I would be willing to accept a 1.5 or a 1 to 5 to help him speed the facilitation of finding someone.
Okay with that.
I'm trying to remember what we just did and how much flack we'll get.
1-3.
Yeah, we just.
I'm the one that's been pushing for 1-3, which is why I want to step on the grenade for you.
I'm not aware of any that conversation.
No, all it is
What
that
I
we,
usually do,
we had a discussion before, it's just countywide as a policy. We initially, it used to be when you had a replacement, then you advertised at step 1.
Right.
And then it was like, obviously, we weren't getting any qualified people, and as a routine matter, people advertised on 1 to 3. And then we had several requests that came in that said, I really want the flexibility to go from 1 to 5
Or
to
1
see,
to 7.
or 1 to 7 to get more. And so 1 to 10, we just heard.
What I
So,
do normally for years.
Right, and so then I made a statement about it on the last couple, and kind of, one of them was 1 to 4. Is what we settled on, and then the last one dropped it down to 1 to 3, so.
I don't really care. I didn't know there was any controversy here. If you want to do 1 to 3, that's fine. And I'll
Well,
go
the
back.
question would be, do you think there?
I don't think it makes a difference between 1 to 3 and 1 to 5 personally, so. I'm not vested in arguing that position one way or other.
Okay, well,
I just want to get the thing posted.
Yeah, get it posted, and why don't we start at 1 to 3, and then if it's you.
All right, that's fine.
Well, you just said you do, how good to have a.
That's fine. I've just, gone through this over the years, so I mean, we want to go through this exercise again.
No, I'm
that's
just
fine.
trying to be fair across the board, is all I was trying to.
That's all, is that we
You
made
have
some other
our approval,
people,
sir.
we said, no, start at 3, and
And
then.
we started with the statement that we're doing this, that we're doing this study, and that could change things. And if you start somebody at a 5, your room for growth might be, and if the study comes back here in a month, that could really swing things around. And
Well,
so
those
one-
steps are reflective of the experience, they would directly related experience they would have. That's always been the key. So I never placed, I think, anyone artificially high that didn't reflect, if anything, done downward adjustments.
I trust your judgment on that.
I like saving money. We do have a new victim witness coordinator that is starting on September 16th. She was currently a dispatcher at emergency management.
Yeah, that explains
That explains it.
an earlier request.
Yeah.
It might be related.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Cornell poached somebody.
Yeah.
Well, I did, but
Remember that.
I think that's what I have for open right now, unless
Okay.
there's any question.
How much training goes into the victim witness coordinator?
Quite a bit.
Is it months and months or?
Well, it's, like pretty much all the positions in my office is just continual education and training. Ideally, we'd like to get the victim witness coordinator nationally and state certified with domestic violence assessment. That usually takes 1 to 2 years. We had Susan De Pasquale was with me for about 5.5 years. She was fully certified. And her assistant was working on that. She went to law school county. We've had an unfortunate turn of events. Susan retired. She hit that age, where she wanted to retire. I think her original plan was to keep working for a few more years, but then, there was a couple of months into the pandemic, and she, like most people, reevaluated her priorities, and one of them was not working. So that was unfortunate. And then there's, that's just, it's a lot of training.
Question for open. Do you, we heard from Larry with probation about drug treatment program. Do you have any input for that, or do you not want to provide any input for that?
Were you happen to be?
You said you had reluctance, so I was.
As far as the drug court.
Well, the drug court doesn't really make sense anymore. The idea of drug court was to assuage the harsh consequences of the war on drugs. I mean, this started in the late 80s, early 90s, when there was a lot of mandatory minimums and vigorous enforcement. We don't have any of that anymore. I mean, for the last year or two, we've been down to 1 or 2 folks. So I find it difficult to justify, multiple people spending all these time and resources on 1 or 2 individuals. When at this point, you're given opportunity after opportunity to seek the help that you need. We have an elaborate system in place in the pursuant to state law for the mandatory referrals for possession of controlled substances. That's been in place for months, worked it out with the law enforcement agencies. I don't know why, that other individuals might not be aware of that, but that is happening. So they're, given their contact information, referral numbers for state intake, we don't have a rehab center here at the county. Otherwise, if they wanted, we could drop them off there, but that's not happening. So we're complying, with the Blake statute as written in both letter and spirit, given the resources that we have. There's, numerous individuals that, they're coming across law enforcement, bags of heroin and meth, and they're just walking off, with a card to treatment. The amounts don't matter. The age doesn't matter. It's the same for 13-year-olds. So 13-year-olds will get the 2 referrals from contacts with law enforcement, but then their first contact with the criminal justice system are subject to mandatory diversion. So the 13-year-old with heroin problems is going to get 3 chances to have referrals to assistance before charges could be brought, and some more. Kind of the carrot and stick. The stick can be quite effective occasionally with some individuals. With other individuals, that the carrot suffices. That's the nature of the criminal justice system. Is state power coercing behavior and punishing those that violate the norms as laid out by our legislature and the court. So that's the business we're in. That's why we have jails. That's why we have courts. Because people don't do the right thing often, unless they are forced to or punished for deviating from the norms. That is the essence of the criminal justice system.
Thank you, sir.
Any other open session questions? Nope, okay. We are going to go into executive session. We have no more business scheduled for the day. We cannot take action in executive session. So I'm going to ask folks to leave the Zoom that are on Zoom. Please note that we will be adjourning at the end of the day. We do have a budget workshop scheduled for 8:30 on Thursday, September 9th. Also, we will be interviewing candidates for the code compliance officer position tomorrow from beginning at 9 a.m.
That will not be open.
That will not be open to the public, but it's just a matter of just noticing the three commissioners will be basically in an executive session interviewing candidates. With that, we will go into executive session in accordance with RCW 42.30.110 (1) I. How much time do you wish to start with? 15 for 15 minutes. I would ask folks to leave. Actually,
They're gonna close.
we're just gonna close it. I'm leaving.
Before I get kicked out. Sure it was closed,
Yeah,
but
somebody watch, make sure.
Oh, I just left, but she'll start once she leaves, it'll start the process.
Make sure the recording is off.
just close it, start up with it.